Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Skyliners and Skywatchers. Welcome to the Vash Sky ParkCast. My name is Vash Sky. I'm going to be your host of today's ceremonies there. With me today is going to be MJ in the producer's room right there. Thank you so much for coming on in, MJ. I know we started a little bit early, so I do appreciate you, doing the early call right there. And thank you so much for coming on in. We've had a tremendous day of coverage across the various networks and streams and so forth. VR starting us off, I believe, 5 o'clock in the morning my time. Ooh, it's early call time right there. But going over that tremendous earnings call for the Walt Disney Company, and I do believe, let me go ahead and check it on the stock price right now, actually. I should have had this up to begin with, but the Disney stock actually doing pretty well, at least initially. Yes, up $7 right there, $6.69. Nice. To be more specific right there, $6.66. Oh, that's interesting. Well, there you go. Let's go ahead and put that actually on screen there for you so you can actually see for yourself. There you go. That's the Disney stock price as it currently exists right now. So pretty good in early trading. Also, to the market overall has been doing pretty well based on maybe recent news involving some conflicts overseas, as we'll get into in just a moment. Actually, not the coverage of those things, but more about how it might affect the Walt Disney Company and might affect your favorite theme parks as you visit them. Very, very interesting stuff going on macroeconomic wise. That's very, very much worth getting into. But I thought this was a very interesting earnings call. Obviously, it's going to be the first one with Josh D'Amaro himself, right? And that, I think, is the big takeaway from this, in that it is that first earnings call with Josh D'Amaro and CFO Hugh Johnston together, actually providing some insight into the company's dealings with shareholders, and obviously investments and investment firms, Wall Street, and so forth. Very, very interesting stuff. Coming off of the shareholders meeting, I was a little bit like, is Josh really the guy right there? He didn't have that great presence that I kind of expected him to have right out the gate. And so for shareholders, I think they were a little bit like, I don't know if this is the guy. Obviously, we saw that stock kind of, wobble around the same area right there. Not too sure what to make of that. So a lot was riding on this earnings call. They had to get this right. And that's why you didn't hear much in the way of bad news from the Walt Disney Company, at least like really bad PR things, outside of like Jimmy Kimmel, for example. And even then, right, they didn't make any moves there in order so that this earnings call, especially the first one under Josh D'Amaro, went swimmingly. And I think it did. I think this earnings call actually did do pretty well in assuring confidence that Josh D'Amaro was the guy. I think a lot of investors needed to hear that, and he definitely came off that way. It's a very interesting, different style of actually communicating this. Previously it was all on that speakerphone, right? And you'd have, Gutierrez or somebody actually come in on the line saying,
apologize for not being the ally that you needed me to be.
Well, actually, not that, but that's Chapek, so I guess it's actually a pretty good one. No, you have them come on the call, something like, welcome to the Walt Disney Company earnings call. That kind of thing, right? And it was just like, really? Like, you have this very bad presentation style, especially from a media and entertainment company, right? I think Valiant Renegade has made this point multiple times, and I think it's so true. It's like, this is a reflection of your brand. This is a reflection of how you actually conduct business. And to have it be on speakerphone and, old slideshow presentations, like it's, somebody put it together and, I don't know, Office or something, or whatever you want to call those, Google Sheets. It just didn't look good. It just was lacking in a lot of ways. And so to reformat everything and actually have like a really good presentational mic for Josh D'Amaro in order to deliver his prepared remarks, to have, prepared remarks interlaced in the question and answer forum, which was very, very interesting, it did feel like management had a little bit more together than even under Bob Iger. And that's the thing about Bob Iger. He hated earnings calls, absolutely despised them. And in fact, maybe that's why he didn't actually give much to the presentation at all, right? Because it's just he felt it was maybe a little bit beneath him. He was all about the entertainment class, not necessarily about the Wall Street class, even though there were some things that he did in order to placate the Wall Street crowd. Josh D'Amaro took a different stance. This is a guy that is even more buttoned up, I think, than Bob Iger in his prime. Bob Iger was very significant in that whenever he would come out, he would never make it a appearance with anything out of sorts. Every single hair in its place, presentation wise, always fixed up to the 9 and all of that. Josh D'Amaro takes that to the nth degree, which is very, very interesting to see how he's a little bit different when it comes to his presentational style. Whenever he's in the parks, he's dressed to the 9. He looks always very, very good. He's always got the latest fashion and so forth. He's very particular about that. And so if it was going to be his first earnings call, he was going to break away from the trends. No, we're gonna have a very nice presentation, and we're going to not differentiate between the different silos within the company, right? He said that multiple times on the earnings call. Hey, we're going to go ahead and have a one Disney approach. So he is not only saying that, he is living it. It's very interesting. We'll have to see how that goes in the long term. But presentation-wise, he is buttoned up, and so you're starting to feel the effects of his kind of management style on all things, including this earnings call, which I thought was very, very interesting. Hugh Johnston actually had a little bit more transparency with some of his remarks, especially those regarding Epic Universe. We'll get into that all for sure, but it's very different from the Bob Iger reign. Whereas I think the Bob Iger era was all about optics, headlines, and, telling people what they wanted to hear. Josh D'Amaro, obviously he is conscious in that same way, but approaching it very differently. It's all about presentation. And yes, it's okay to divulge a little bit. Some honesty goes a long way, I think, in Josh D'Amaro's eyes. But it's all about creating that kind of perfect image as the perfect CEO, which is very, very interesting. It's just a different mindset going in on that, and I thought it was very interesting to see it on display for this earnings call in particular. Let's go ahead and go over, though, some of the details from that call because, well, this is also very fascinating. Here you go from Mike over there at Blog Mickey. Disney Experiences enjoys a record $9.5 billion in revenue for Q2 2026. May 6th, 2026 is the date on this one. Now, you'll remember that the last quarter actually had the Experiences division accrue, $10 billion for the first time. So Q2, not so far off. And, well, you'll know that Q2 is not necessarily as significant in travel patterns as connected to the parks as Q1 there. Remember, Q1 falls between October 1st and December. So that's a significant time for the parks. You have everybody coming in, everybody booking vacations, everybody, packing into these parks in order to take advantage of their holiday offerings. Q2 doesn't necessarily benefit from all of that, but still, they were able to bring in $9.5 billion. How they do it? Here you go. Walt Disney Company has announced its Q2 fiscal year 2026 earnings report, and the Disney Experiences division, responsible for theme parks and cruise ships, posted $9.6 billion in revenue. This represents a 7% jump in year-over-year revenue, and here's the latest. The $9.5 billion revenue and $2.6 billion in operating income were both Q2 records for the Disney Experiences division. The year-over-year increase was 7% and 5% respectively. Disney pointing to higher guest spending at domestic theme parks and experiences as a primary driver again. Disney also said that an increase in passenger cruise days helped, reflecting the launches of the Disney Destiny in November of 2025, the Disney Adventure in March 2026. It's very interesting to note here, too, that they noted that the Disney Adventure, the costs associated with it, right, and the costs associated with opening their newest land over there at Disney Adventure World were significant, and that ate into that operating income by just a little bit. But they were also quick to say, hey, look, listen, we believe in our cruise product, and that's why we're going to expand our fleet to 13 by 2031. A number that they've actually given out before, which is very interesting to hear it in the context of this call because obviously the approach to go cruise heavy has worked out swimmingly for them. Also, too, the effects of Disney Adventure World, the rebranding effort for that park, and actually getting people in there for the World of Frozen looks to be paying off in the short term. We'll have to see about that international growth right there. I don't think it's going to be in the same way that those domestic parks have enjoyed, at least consistency-wise. Sometimes you get some quarters where the attendance for international's way up, and you see it kind of drops down again. So it's very seasonal, it's very up and down, whereas domestic is pretty steady. On the domestic front, though, looks like they had a 1% decrease in attendance. However, they did have a 5% increase in, I believe, what's the revenue and operating income? Let me see for that. What was that? Yes. Higher guest spending at domestic theme parks and experiences as a driver. 5%. Yeah, 5% operating income increase. And what's interesting about that number is that they said that there were higher prices attached to their offerings at Disney parks, and that's why that you had that 5% increase. So it's not necessarily that more people are actually coming in there spending more money because they're so engaged with the Disney product. It's because Disney raised their prices. They charged more in order to make up for that little bit of shortfall that they were going to experience when it came to attendance. So making more money off less people. We'll see how that actually works in the long run right there. But that's exactly how they did it. It's very interesting too. VR brought this out, and I thought it was a very appropriate thing to bring out because if you actually see right here, this is the earnings report itself from the actual PDF document that they actually produced for this presentation right here. You can see right there under the lines here, theme park admissions separated from resorts and vacations. I thought that was very, very interesting to do that. I've never seen them do that before. Valiant was very quick to point that out. Why they're doing that is very, very interesting. You would think that there would be maybe less transparency in combining a lot of these silos for this one Disney mission that Josh DeMauro has. But instead, there's more. I just thought that was very odd that they actually did it this way. And there were comparisons made, obviously, to Comcast and what they're actually able to do with Epic Universe and so forth. I think their last quarter, which would be Q1 for them, I think saw the theme parks division increase by 24% in terms of revenue. Just a massive number. Considering that they opened one park, and yet you're getting big double-digit gains right there. It's just very, very interesting. Obviously, Disney doesn't have the benefit of opening up another park, right? So their gains are going to be single digits at best. However, still, if you break down theme park admissions right there, if we compare the year over year right there, so it would be Q2 fiscal year 2025. You can see a 6% increase right there. Resorts and vacations, though, 9% increase year over year. That's very, very significant. Resorts and vacations, I believe that actually might include cruise line specifically in there. You also might have, obviously, you have the 56 or 57 different resort hotels that Disney operates around the world right there, included in that in that description, and also to DVC. DVC is going to be your big bread and butter for that kind of for that kind of byline right there. Very, very interesting stuff right there. But parks and experiences, merchandise and food and beverage right there. 5% increases in that as well. So not only are you paying more to get in, not only are you paying more to stay, but you're also paying more once you actually get into the parks, which is all their strategy right there, which is, unfortunate for all of us, but good for them. But still, though, I mean, in order to maximize this revenue stream, in order to maximize this operating income, you have to keep costs associated with your theme parks down. And I think that's going to be the crux of the second half of this show here is the attraction downgrades that have been associated with the parks recently. Thomas Muslim, when he gave his presentation to the press in February of this year, actually, right before he was actually made chairman of the experiences division himself. He actually said that they were looking for efficiencies and they were looking to reduce downtime and all these different things and all these different buzzwords that I think a lot of people felt good about until we saw the operational reality of what that looked like. And it's really fascinating to see, because when you look at it in the context of this earnings report, Disney is doing all that they can to make the experiences division look as good as they can make it look, because they know that investors are looking at the experiences division now with a fine-tooth comb. They know that everything's being driven basically by the revenue that is brought in with the experiences division. And so the danger here is that if the experiences division falters even a little bit, now it's going to look extra bad, because what other division is providing that same revenue, that same growth, those same growth metrics, that kind of backbone to everything that they're doing? Well, nothing. I mean, a lot of investors were predicting that they would have plus $450 million in terms of operating income for the streaming side of the business. Now, they actually superseded those numbers by a great margin. I believe it was 582 was the final number right there, which is good. This is fantastic. It's great. I mean, this is something that, I remember when the earnings calls that came out where it was $45 million in operating income, that being the profit metric for the Walt Disney Company, what they use there. And so to have a division that has absorbed as much money as streaming has, or their DTC division has, that includes streaming, Disney Plus, ESPN Plus, all that kind of stuff, right? To have that absorb, tens of billions of dollars from the company's coffers, and only come up with $445 million to show for it, and that's per quarter. I mean, it's still in the red when you look at the total investment and so forth. But to move that to an area in which they're making plus $500 million is significant, and I think investors allotted them for that. We do have, though, somebody joining me for this tremendous earnings coverage right here. It is the one, it is the only, Jared from Capture the Magic. Hello, Jared. Jared, are you there?
I am here. How's it going?
Going pretty good. Just giving everybody the rundown of the earnings call, especially for people who may not have woken up as early as we did in order to hear it.
Great way to start the day with an earnings call.
Yeah, it's just fantastic. And I'm running on like 2 or 3 hours of sleep or something like that. So it was quite the way to wake me up for sure. But hey, got a couple of brews of coffee in there and was able to digest it, I think, hopefully. Did you hear the call? Sure.
I did hear the call and got a chance to dig into the numbers a little bit. One thing I'll say right off the bat, it is a much more professional sounding call with Josh tomorrow, because they actually figured out how to use microphones on an earnings call.
Yes.
Not just have a speakerphone that you're blaring into. I thought right off the bat, I was like, well, this sounds at least more relaxed than the previous ones.
Oh, it's absolutely so true. There's no question about that. I mean, there have been a lot of people who have listened to these calls for years and who have criticized, like, you are supposed to be a state-of-the-art media company. You call yourself a technology company in some cases, right? Like, why don't you have a better presentational format for these earnings calls? Everybody trumps you. Warner Brothers, Comcast, I think Netflix for sure. It's like, what are you doing? And to Josh D'Amaro's credit, he is very presentation mindful, I guess, or conscious, right? Yeah. And he's bringing a little bit of that to the C-suite right there.
And that's something that when he was named, I was like, I could definitely see a shift more towards, like, he seems, I don't know him, but from what I can tell of him, he seems much more savvy when it comes to like messaging and how things are presented. Whereas I always felt like Iger was just really awkward when he was talking. Almost seemed like he was annoyed he had to give you the information that you were asking for. And Josh has a much more like easygoing demeanor about him. And I did also like too how it was like D'Amaro and Hugh Johnston, and they took a bunch of questions. I don't recall this many questions in an earnings call, at least in recent history that I can recall. So it was interesting just sitting there. Like, I don't know how many questions they had, maybe at least 10, I think.
Oh, I had at least 10. I mean, they took a lot of questions. I thought they were going to end several times. They just kept on taking them, which leads me to my second point about the presentation style of the quarterly earnings call. They didn't actually have those representatives from those investment firms and so forth actually ask those questions on the call. They actually took them maybe in advance. I don't know how far advance, but they took them in advance. I don't know, pre-screened or whatever, but they had them written down, obviously, submitted, and then actually read back to the various executives. Now, in that exchange, you heard some executives or, Hugh Johnston or Josh Tomorrow at times speak off the cuff, and then you also had prepared remarks kind of interlaced within there.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really interesting. What do you think that might have been?
I mean, I think anytime these companies, whether it's Disney or even I listen to Comcast as well. I think anytime they can have a prepared statement, or maybe they have a guess, and I guess you could say beforehand, they know what questions are going to be asked ahead of time. They're going to read from a statement whenever they can possibly do it. Because I think that in recent history, Iger's had a few times when he's spoken off the cuff that has not gone great. And I don't think investors like the answer. So I think from their perspective, it's like anytime you can just sort of have a very safe answer and not, there were times you could hear Iger being like, well, actually, and he'd say something like, what? And then, it causes this cascading effect. Whereas, Hugh Johnson definitely had a couple of responses that were, prepared ahead of time. Josh probably did, but I feel like he's savvy enough. You may not be able to tell just in an audio format if he's reading off of a script necessarily, or if he's kind of off the cuff, but he's kind of just even keeled, which I think probably is pretty good in these to not, get too high or too low about these. And it was just the minute I heard the microphone, I was like, oh, wow, it's easier to listen to when you have headphones in, when somebody's actually using a microphone versus I feel like they just had a boardroom and they just put a phone in the middle of it. And they're just like, just yell your answer into it. And you're like, okay. And it just a different dynamic to it, at least from the optics end.
Absolutely. And obviously you can kind of feel that energy difference on this call that I thought was really interesting. Obviously we knew that Josh Tomorrow was going to bring a distinct flavor to it, separate from Bob Iger, as we heard maybe Bob Chapek actually doing years before. But to hear Josh Tomorrow in crystal clear quality right there, and obviously all those prepared answers, there was a flow and a presentation, I think like professionalism that you didn't quite get from the old calls right there, which I thought was really interesting. Now, in years past, shareholders meetings, right? You would have shareholders actually call in and ask their questions, and that was always quite the circus there. They changed that format, right?
When they had that, I miss when they had the people calling in, because sometimes you would get some that would sneak in that you were like, oh man, that's a good one.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, that's very interesting. Those are legendary. And I remember when those were actually in person, which was interesting. But when they switched to the virtual format, obviously they just took a different tone and tenor. Initially, though, people called in, and well, it was a very interesting process. And then they went with, the submitted questions, and we all know that those are probably pre-screened. In this way, though, what their shareholders maybe don't benefit from for their meetings versus the earnings calls is, well, you can't short shrift these questions, right? Because if you get a little too safe with it, if you pre-screen too much, and obviously that could get you into some real hot water with Wall Street investors. So the fact that they took as many as they did, I thought was good, and kind of made up for the fact that you didn't hear those questions live.
True. That's a good point. And something that's also interesting, and I think there were some questions around this because this was his first, full earnings call as him in charge. You didn't hear from Dana Walden. And I think a lot of people had questions about if she was going to be sort of right there. And I think you're starting to see definitely trying to showcase, like, he's the CEO. Hugh Johnston's going to be the, money guy talking about those numbers. And Dana's just doing her thing, out of sight, essentially. Because I don't think we've even heard from her much since she was named the VP or whatever she is now. I haven't really heard much from her, which is kind of
I thought it's such a great point. I thought for sure we would hear her name, at least in some circles, regarding the Jimmy Kimmel stuff that's been occurring, right? Mm-hmm. But honestly, even with that, which we heard her name was synonymous with the previous incarnation of the Kimmel scandals. We just didn't we didn't hear from her, and we haven't heard from her really at all. They really want to push Josh out there and make him the focus, whether it's Josh himself or maybe some others around him. I'm not sure, but I think it's a smart move in order to like say, hey, I am the guy in charge. If we actually, I think Lauren Connor said this point, which I think was a brilliant point. The whole layoffs that we've been hearing recently from Disney, it's like, okay, when it comes to bad things, I'm going to be the guy. When it comes to good things, I'm going to be the guy. Regardless of what I would like to do, what not to do, whatever, I'm going to be known as the guy in charge. And I think that's a smart move from his standpoint, because it was a really big question mark whether or not Dana Walden was going to, be kind of elbowing herself in there, as she did with her negotiations, actually, to have the chief creative role there. But we just haven't seen it yet, though.
Yeah, and the Jimmy Kimmel thing's interesting, because I do wonder. I could see a scenario where that becomes Dana's issue to deal with, and not Josh getting, because I think there is an OG. He's in the chat. What's up, OG? He's talked about
Absolutely.
before how Josh doesn't know the movie and that side of stuff as much. That's kind of her wheelhouse. I'm curious how this is going to be handled with him, and if that's going to be like, is Josh going to come in and be the guy that lays the hammer down, or is that going to be something Dana's going to have to deal with, good or bad? And she gets, like, if it goes bad, she's the one that gets the flack and not him. That's kind of interesting.
That's the one I want to watch right there, because one could make the argument that if you are the guy, then whether things are good or bad, they happen to you. What I was worried about is when the good things happen, she would get the credit. When the bad things happen, he would get the short end of the stick. It hasn't happened so far, but we have to wait maybe even a few years for the creative juices that Dana Walden is infusing with this company to actually bear fruit, right? Mm-hmm. And that's going to be really, really interesting to see. Maybe 2 to 3 years, but it's really fascinating to see kind of like gaming fall under her district, right? Previously it was with experiences and all that stuff. But before we get into the particulars of the call, we want to go ahead and honor some of the people who have graciously supported this channel. Thank you so much, Juliet, for coming on in here with the 2 British pounds sterling. Very much appreciate that. Evening, Vash Sky ParkCast, and Skyliners. Yes, indeed. Skyliners, thank you for all your support right there, and taking us to amazing places. I think we just actually passed the 3.5 thousand subscriber mark right there, which is really, really cool. Awesome stuff to see our channel being so supported through views, likes, everything else. Thank you, very much appreciate that. And thank you, Julia, for modding for this amazing channel right here, and the 2 British pounds sterling, and also to Hidden Geek Village coming on in here, gifting 1 Vash Sky ParkCast membership. Yes, we have a new Sky Watcher, and that is GusGus2539. Thank you so much. That affords you the ability to use emojis, which is cool, and also to gives you access to our Saturday show, Vash and Vixen, which we're going to be talking about some really interesting stuff this weekend. You do not want to miss out on that. It's going to be at 3 p.m. Eastern on Saturday. Thank you, Hidden Geek Village. Very much appreciate you. Awesome stuff, Jared. From this earnings call and from all the coverage today, there's no question about that. I thought they said some really interesting things though, regarding so many different topics and issues here, not just the numbers, but maybe some future guidance on maybe some strategies that they have. For one, I want to go ahead and talk about this here, and I'm going to maybe bounce around in some of these places, but Disney did too, so I guess it's okay. Here you go, laughingplace.com. Giamaro says Disney Plus is the digital center of the company, while the parks are the physical centers. This kind of alludes to this Bloomberg report, actually, that suggested that Disney wants to go ahead, or Josh D'Amaro, that is, wants to go ahead and break down the verticals, break down the silos, right? And combine all of these different platforms that they work hand in hand together closely than they ever have before. And one of those ways that they're going to do that is through a super app, where Disney Plus is your one-stop shop for all things Disney, whether it be the Disney Store, whether it be the Disney parks, right? right now we have distinct apps available for Disneyland, Walt Disney World, Disneyland Paris, and so forth. Well, what if we all had those distinct apps in one? That's what Bloomberg was talking about right there with this report. I thought it was very, very interesting. I kind of saved this because I thought they were going to cover it on the earnings call, and they did. This is part of this kind of one Disney kind of connected experience that Josh D'Amaro has envisioned. He outlined a little bit of that on this call right here, which I thought was very, very interesting. But as it was being described, I mean, I think Pro actually knocked this out of the ballpark when he actually brought this up, but this kind of sounds like Chapek's metaverse, right? This kind of this kind of a distinct digital backbone that would incorporate all these services. Now we have Disney Plus actually doing that for Josh D'Amaro. What do you think about that, Jared? I mean, do you think a super app and maybe this interconnectivity would actually work for the company, or is it just a bunch of fluff?
It's interesting. So from the media side, this is something that we've all known they've been working toward, which is like everything that you can view or watch or whatever is within essentially Disney Plus, including the parks into that is interesting. That would be, I mean, the only, I think a downside would be, let's say the app goes down, then everything goes down instead of being segmented.
That's true.
Out. But I suppose the thinking there would be, it's Disney Plus. If you have a paid subscription, you can then watch the content. If you don't, then you get your park stuff in there. I mean, I like the idea is interesting. I think from an execution standpoint, that becomes, you're going to have to dig through a lot of troubleshooting to make sure all that works. And if something goes down, how does that work? But I'm not surprised to hear about it. And again, one of the reasons he got this job is because he's, very pro, using new technologies and all that in with about AI and things. So I think it's not too surprising, although I am very curious about the logistics of how that would all work and the real, like the user experience. Because you can really get in some of these apps, they get kind of clunky if there's too much stuff in them. And there have been issues with Disney tech in the past as well, and maybe even going on right now. So I think there's some, if your tech can support it, it might be able to work. I'm just really curious what that would actually look like, how it would operate. All that stuff. I need more details about it, but I can't say I'm shocked that that's something that they are looking to potentially do.
I'm not shocked either. The first time I ever heard the one Disney branding was this effort, I think back in the early 2010s or maybe late 2010s or I'm sorry. I should say like 2008, 2009, 2011, that kind of area, right? This idea that they were going to get away from Team Disney Orlando and Team Disney Anaheim, the management, the teams that actually oversee the distinct resorts, right? So in Disneyland, you have Team Disney Anaheim, and then our Walt Disney World, obviously, you have Team Disney Orlando. And so it was like, okay, can we actually just have one management team across both parks right there? And this came down to like ordering, so like cups, for example, right? Hey, why are we ordering two different why are we ordering distinct cups from two different vendors? We just have one, right? And that was kind of the synergies and efficiencies that they were actually talking about. Okay, in theory, works out great. In practice, it doesn't work out at all, because I mean, even Thomas Muslim, right, when we were covering the Magic Band stuff, I believe on your channel, right, yep. Jared? Okay, Thomas Muslim said that only 7% of people at Disneyland actually use a Magic Band versus Walt Disney World, about 55%. So it's a big difference, it's a big disparity. And he talked about how Walt Disney World is unlike any theme park operation anywhere in the world, because a lot of those are local, this is international, so that makes it very distinct. And obviously with 45,000 hotel rooms on property, you can kind of see the differences compared to the less than 3,000 at Disneyland. Okay, they just are operated so differently that it really doesn't work. You have to have two different distinct management systems in place in order to actually efficiently and effectively actually serve the guests that they distinctly do. Even when it comes to cups in that example, right? It was like, okay, well, if we only buy from one vendor, then logistically we still have to get to the other side of the continent. So it's kind of like it just doesn't really work out anyway. And so they actually dropped the one Disney thing after a while, and they just went back to their distinct managements and management styles and so forth. Okay. Well, now you want to go ahead and grow that out to include disparate parts of the Walt Disney Company. I mean, Jared, even if you're just talking about the parks, there's like what I think 3 or 4 distinct Disney parks apps, right? I think what you have Disney Play, I believe, and Disneyland, Walt Disney World, and I believe you have Disneyland Paris, right?
Yes.
As it currently exists right now. Well, any one of those is like 300 megabytes just by itself. Okay, Now combine all of them. You're talking about like a 2 gig app there.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No, that's a great
Please.
point, and that's something I was kind of the one big app thing. It's a lot of, and you're completely right. It sounds great in theory a lot of times, but how and you're completely right about how Disney World, Disneyland operate. That's where my curiosity is like, how are you going to manage this within one app? It seems to me it would be individual, like you would have your Disney World almost an app within an app sort of thing, because you have to have dedicated stuff to each destination that's just different and across the board. It's not like things you do at Disney World don't necessarily work at Disneyland.
No.
And it's like I definitely agree with that. I'm very curious how that. I almost feel like within they'd have the app, they would have to have the individual theme park apps still that it would just redirect you to or something. Because I just feel like that would be a huge undertaking, try to put all that under one roof and it not be like a 10 gigabyte, app that you download on your phone constantly.
Right. I mean, that's really the thing. You would have to have so much access in order to service all of these different disparate parts of the company. It just becomes like, okay, I want to watch Disney Plus. I don't want to go to the theme parks. Why do I have to download 2-3 gigabytes? Like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, it just kind of falls apart right there. And that's assuming that you maintain all the functionality. But here's the thing, Jared. Obviously, these systems within these parks, well, they change and evolve over time, right? So, like at Walt Disney World, for example, you can actually connect your ticket media with Google Wallet, I believe, is how that transaction is actually facilitated. Disneyland doesn't have anything like that at all. Preview Lightning services Lightning Lane services are different. Lightning Lane itself is different, right? Lightning Lane Multipass at Disney World actually includes different tier lists and so forth, and when you can actually book your virtual queues or your virtual lines and so forth, right, is differently timed than Disneyland. There are certain perks with Disneyland if you buy it advanced versus Walt Disney World. Like, there's all these kinds of things that make them distinct, and why. I mean, they've been separated in the past because they were kind of built up from those management teams and built apps that would actually incorporate their precise functions in order to service their precise guests, which were very unique from others, right? Well, let's say you do put all this stuff together. You're going to have distinct communications teams in order to effectively communicate from Team Disney Orlando or Team Disney Anaheim effectively what they would require from that app. So essentially, you have distinct teams all over again. And so I just don't know if that's quite the backbone that's going to bring all this stuff together. I mean, maybe if you combine like ESPN, Disney Plus, Hulu, and all the different streaming services in one, and then maybe, keep all their parks stuff in one, maybe that could work. But super app with Disney's IT? I don't think so. Jared.
Well, that's a good point with Disney's IT. That is a very big issue that they've. I think it's gotten a little bit over the years, but there was a period there where it was just terrible. But they're probably, if I were to guess, they're thinking big picture that within the app, and mind you, this is before, and I think they had a comment about this. They're going to start utilizing AI a lot more to almost operate as a travel agency, like a Disney operated travel agency. So I could see them in the app being like, well, what if you go to book a trip and then it's like, well, if you're a Disney Plus subscriber, you get a certain discount, and then you sign up for Disney Plus inside the app. And it's like, it's a way for them to maybe try and boost Disney Plus sub numbers while also doing the vacation side. But I completely agree. The logistics side of it seems like an absolute mess. So maybe you could book stuff within the app, but I just think the day-to-day operations, like you were saying, I don't know how you would put it inside of one app unless it was essentially just a wrapper that would kick you over to another app to do all the individual specific things at each one. But that would be my guess. They're looking at like, well, how many people come on here? We could just hey, sign up for Disney Plus. Maybe you give them a 99 cents that they used to do all the time for 3 months, whatever it is to get them in there and trying to boost that side up. Because obviously part of it is, well, they're wanting to get more Disney Plus subscribers. They're wanting to do all that stuff. So that would kind of be my guess. But yeah, I would need the logistics. I'd like to know exactly how they would make that work. And then when, and not an if, but when there's a tech issue that pops up, how much does that affect it if like the whole app goes down? Is everything unoperational in the parks because of it? Like that's a logistic thing that you got to think through a little bit.
Oh yes, absolutely. I mean, I have no idea how you meld all this stuff and how you get all this stuff to work. I mean, I think Freedom Seeker actually pointed out beautifully. I mean, the website sucks now. Yes, in fact, it sucks so much, to use the phraseology there, Freedom Seeker, that I remember a story in which there was this I guess tech based class. I think at some community college, or maybe it actually was a pristine college institution or whatever. And the professor actually brought up the Walt Disney World website as the prime example of what not to do in your web design. like, it was that bad. Constant crashes, cookies all over the place, security issues, just unbelievable stuff that he was able to break down in full for that class and just showcase everybody, this is what you don't want. This is what you never should do. I mean, it has a reputation today. So, I mean, hopefully they get their act together in terms of IT, but I'm just not sure. Maybe they feel that AI is a easy way to go about that process. But I'm not so sure about that either, as we've heard that AI code, well, isn't the highest quality code that you can possibly have if we're looking at things like Windows 11 and all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, that's a really good point. Well, it's like one of those things where like I have a web design background, and if I were to guess with Disney's website, a lot of these companies, like back when I did work in the corporate sphere, you would have these internal systems that were like from the 80s. And you're like, why are you guys still using this? Because the amount of work it would take them to rewrite all this code, they just kick it down the can. I feel like the website is that way because probably that base code on that website is probably, if I were to guess, at least 10 years old, and it's just you patchwork it and you just build it on top of each other, and then all of a sudden it's like, to do all this stuff, I almost feel like if you want to do this super app, you're gonna have to rewrite the app from scratch. And that is something that would take time. And if you're going to use AI, like that's something that I don't think you could take their infrastructure as it has it now and just mesh it together in an app and think it's going to work well. Because I just don't think that would work.
I'm not thinking it's going to work either. So I'm really curious to see what eventually happens to that idea and whether or not they actually pursue it. It looks like they're gung ho and doing that right now. I do wonder, like the old incarnation of One Disney and how that used to work, right? And how they were pursuing that for a while, then they dropped it. Maybe this might actually meet the same fate. But we will see. There's a couple of things going on in the chat right there that we have to be, showcasing here. We have Old Lady Gangster actually becoming a new Sky Watcher here on the channel. Thank you so much. Very much appreciate that. Thank you for joining us there. Again, Fashion Dixon Saturdays. Definitely keep note of that as a perk for your membership. And also, too, not to be outdone, Old Lady Gangster continues by saying, or Gamester, I should say, continues by saying, with the $1.99, thank you so much. Do we really need an app at all? We didn't used to. Yeah, indeed, right? We certainly didn't used to back in the day. We used to have paper tickets, Jared. We used to have paper fast passes and paper maps and all that kind of great stuff. And it would be great in order to bring some of that stuff back. And, well, at least from Thomas Muslim, he has noted there has been some phone fatigue, which is also interesting in the context of making a super app, but that's besides the point. Mm-hmm. Okay, it would be great to go back to those days, but unfortunately now Disney is so reliant on those app-based products and so forth. There's just no way that they're divorcing themselves from them. How would you even facilitate something like Lightning Lane in its current incarnation without an app like what's on offer at Walt Disney World and Disneyland? You just simply couldn't be able to do it. And that's the most unfortunate thing about it. There's really no going back. But in order to get bigger and incorporate multiple parks and so forth, I think that's a recipe for disaster. What say you, Jared?
That's a great point, because I was actually going to mention that Thomas Maslim's comments about the phone usage kind of goes in the face of the one app thing, unless there is The only way I can see having less usage of app in the theme parks as they stand now is you would have to, and I think we talked about this on the live stream the other night, is like you'd have to rework Lightning Lane, how it operates. You would have to make some pretty significant changes in terms of how the guests navigate and use the parks. I don't know if it's lip service. I mean, he may want to do these things, but when it comes down to actually doing them, I don't know how they decouple that. It's not a simple thing. It's one thing to recognize you need to do something, but at the same time, it's like you would have to change so many things the way they operate. So maybe they don't add any more complexity to it, but to do a Disney World vacation, at least I can speak to Disney World without usage of the app, it would be a lot of people would be very upset about what they would get out of their vacation, the money they spent, if they were not using the app, which I think is a strength of what I've talked about before with Universal. They're still, you don't have to be on that app in the parks. I mean, you can, but you literally could walk into those parks and never touch your phone if you didn't really want to. And I think that is an advantage that they have, and probably why they're not going to, if I were to guess, the Epic APs, and they did that survey about attaching a theme park reservation. I don't imagine that went very well considering the audience of Universal. And so it seems like, which is not uncommon when you have a big company, the one part or the heads up want to do the big old app, and the people in the individual divisions are like, hey, we need to use less of the phone. I don't know how they marry those two and how they come to a compromise there, and really how that would work.
I fully agree. I have no idea how it would even work in the modern context. I mean, how do you facilitate gas, for example? I don't even know how you would necessarily be able to do that. All the fast pass machines are gone, so you can't necessarily go back.
Right.
It's just part of the Disney experience now, which is really unfortunate. Now, I'm encouraged to hear maybe Thomas Moslem doing something about that, maybe taking off at least some dependencies from the app. We'll have to see. I will agree with you, Universal, a little bit more convenient on that end, given that you don't necessarily have to engage with the app if you don't want to. But if you do, better services from it. Like, for example, when you actually mobile order, right? When you go to Universal, currently right now, at least in Florida, you can actually sit at a table, scan the barcode on the table, and have that brought to you. That is utilizing technology in a really creative way that makes it so that it's a real convenience feature, not just ordering ahead. So there you go. Hello, Gamester. Thank you so much for the $1.99. And also, too, Hawaii Dragon Star coming in here, also becoming a Sky Watcher. Thank you so much. Very much appreciate that. That is awesome. You've been a long watcher on the Pro Network and so forth. Thank you so much for becoming a member here to this channel. Very much appreciate that. And Disney Fan 55 coming on in here. Congratulations, Vash, on hitting 3810 subscribers. So 3,800, thank you so much. Very much appreciate that. I wasn't even keeping track of the number that closely, but that is quite the milestone. Thank you so much, everybody, for supporting this channel right here. Now, Jared, you brought up Universal, and I'm so glad that you did, because guess what? We're going to get into a little bit of that as well, as it relates to this earnings call. You know where I'm going with this. It seems that Disney is finally ready to acknowledge that there might have been some cannibalization when it came to the opening of Epic Universe. You'll remember, Jared, initially, I think Bob Iger actually came out and said, no. We've been preparing all this time for Epic Universe with our myriad of investments, like Avatar in Pandora at Animal Kingdom, and also, too, Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. We've been preparing for this moment for all this time. We're going to be ready. Well, after that was laughed out of the room, they then changed tact and said, wait a minute, hang on here, Epic Universe? Well, obviously it's going to bring in more visitation, which we will also benefit from. And it's like, okay, that's an interesting spin right there. Well, now they're actually saying, yes, we may have had some epic headwinds as provided by the opening of Epic Universe. There you go. 4 hours ago by Walt Disney World Magic. Disney World bookings pacing up strongly as Epic Universe headwinds begin to ease. When people actually were hearing about that, they were having a good laugh, like 5L5, for example, here. It's so weird that they talk about the growth next quarter, quote, not that we've lapped the opening of Epic Universe. But wait, I thought when Epic opened, it was only going to positively impact Walt Disney World. Disney World bookings are currently pacing up strongly, and the Epic Universe attendance headwind is expected to ease as Disney begins to lap its opening, says Disney CFO Hugh Johnston. Domestic park attendance was down 1% in Q2, but strip out international visitation, and it would have grown, which is very, very interesting. This is kind of the unevenness of international visitation and what it actually does to the parks. It's really, really interesting, that whole segment right there. But what do you make of Epic Universe cannibalizing Disney? I mean, look, I think it was obvious to anybody that was actually looking at it. You don't get double-digit gains for Comcast's theme park division unless there is some cannibalization in place, because we all know the bookings for the Orlando area, they were higher, but they weren't that much higher. Jared, your thoughts on this, please.
I thought it was interesting. They mentioned it twice, which before, and I think this probably does come down to the leadership. I think Iger, like you had mentioned, at first they wouldn't even say Epic Universe. It's like they did. It's like Voldemort. We can't say the name because we might pull people over there or something. Then it was like, well, it's actually going to help us. And then I believe right before the park opened, they actually were like, they had changed the wording again, where it was like there might be a potential impact here. So it's like they've had this strange messaging around it. And I feel like Josh, being a parks guy, it maybe comes from his attitude of being like, it's not going to hurt anything to acknowledge. And like everybody knows that this is a thing, that you had this brand new park open. It was going to draw attendance. And obviously Comcast has benefited from really good quarters ever since Epic has opened. And so it's interesting and kind of, it's nice to hear them actually acknowledge it in a real world setting about like, there are these headwinds and all these things. Now, I don't know, their bookings are up. I guess, I don't know those numbers, but it makes sense. Like you're coming up the 1 year anniversary of this. Although I've said before as well, like it's not just a 1-2 year, it's going to be a continual thing with Epic as they continue to build it. But it's nice to have a little bit more. I don't feel like Josh is much of a gaslighter, maybe as Bob Iger was. Like
right,
a realist about this, and maybe he's bringing a little bit of that into the mix here, where it's like when Iger said those things, like you said, everybody knew the thing here. Now, I will say, I always push back and saying Epic was not going to be a Disney World killer, like many people were kind of hyping it up, but it's something that was going to impact their attendance, and I think it obviously did on some level, especially last year. As it goes along, I think that's going to be interesting as Epic continues to add additions onto it, and how does Disney's things that they're building right now, how does that impact the attendance? But I heard it the first time and I was like, oh, they said it, and then they said it again, and I was like, okay, well, it seems there's a different mandate in place now where you can actually just say these things and admit, I guess, the truth of it in many ways.
Yeah, I was a little worried about what the truth might actually look like under a Josh D'Amaro era. Now, we know that Josh D'Amaro actually visited Epic Universe, which is very, very interesting, so he couldn't hide that fact right there. But, obviously, in the Bob Iger era, we're just kind of used to BS. Honestly, that's what it is, right? It's just fluff or different statements from company executives that don't make sense, especially when you're looking at these things with a very clear lens there. So it's kind of like, what is going on? And Josh D'Amaro worried me a little bit because, well, we all know what happened at the 2024 D23 Ultimate Fan event, in which they say, hey, cars, come into Magic Kingdom. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be great. It's going to be fantastic. You're going to love it. It's going to blow your mind. And then 2 days after that, when everybody's gone home, when everybody's flying home and have, the amazing projects in their head dancing around there, they announce, oh, yeah, we're getting Rivers of America, right? Yeah. And it was like, whoa, like that is a big deal. Why couldn't Josh D'Amaro actually face the music in that setting right there? So I was worried he was going to pull these same tricks with earnings calls and investors and the company's health and so forth. But to be transparent in acknowledging that Epic Universe exists and that they did have headwinds from it, I think is a very good move. I don't think it's a bad move. I think a little bit of transparency goes a long way right there. Now they're saying that they're optimistic about future bookings right there. I mean, they are doing some discounts and so forth, so I don't know, what that might actually look like on a revenue stream and so forth, as they've detailed out in their, own figures, right? They're separating out attendance, revenue gains versus resorts and everything like that. So we'll have to analyze those numbers closely. But I mean, if we look at Comcast, Jared, it is crazy. Every single quarter since Epic Universe has been open, I mean, we have seen double-digit, like 20 percentile gains in their theme park division, specifically when it comes to revenue. I mean, it is absolutely wild. Jared, what do you think the short-term outlook looks for the company? Because see, my concern for the company is really like it's going to take years for these new investments to actually open, and in all that time, Epic Universe is going to just be gobbling up all those guests, and they're not slowing down either when it comes to their expansions. What do you think that looks like?
Yeah, no, that's interesting because I think you're going to continue to see discounts like they've been doing the past 2 years. And there's some heavy ones like the hotels. Like there's a couple that you can get like $99 a night at some of these value resorts, and even some of these moderate ones. I think the Cars family suite is like $260. Like you're seeing some really big discounts, which I think is going to be their driving force in the coming years. I'm curious, like, if now again they keep raising prices, so their attendance was down, but the revenue's up. So, and I've said for a long time, this has worked. It works until it doesn't. And what is that point in which you just can't get all your revenue growth just from pumping up prices? They haven't hit it yet. So the thing is, if in the short term, if this strategy keeps working for the next 2 to 3 years as these things are being built, they run these discounts, they're able to just maintain or maybe even down a little bit. I've said for the whole time, that would be a win in my eyes if they were able to do that. And then whatever the impact of these new lands as they start opening, see how those impact it. But I suppose the danger you have in this is if this strategy of just raising prices for this revenue growth stops working,
right?
What are they left to do? Because that's the point in which then it's like you start talking about maybe trying to reinforce value. And maybe there's some things that Josh is thinking he's got in his back pocket. I know we've speculated and talked about like Magical Express and these other perks coming back. Like that's the thing. I think the smooth sailing for them is just it maintains for now, maybe dips a tad bit before these things are open. But the bad side of that is like, I just don't know what they do in that spot other than just run even more aggressive discounts. But I think not Moffett Nathan's talked about before, you're probably projected, down 1% to 2% in the coming years on Disney's attendance.
Right.
Continues to build, and then what it looks like after that, that's going to be really curious about once these lands open, like what's the demand like. And obviously during that time, Epic's going to have new additions as well as a new coaster, and they've got stuff coming to their parks. So I think I've said for a while, you're in a theme parks arms race right now, and it benefits the consumer.
Absolutely.
It's just an interesting time for Disney because they waited so long to announce these additions. When they could have done this years before Epic even opened, and now they're left in this area where Epic kind of has this free run for a couple of years. And what impact did they take then?
Yeah, you're gonna have some hard summers there, which is no good. I know that Florida politics just had a big spread on the like a civil lawsuit involving what was actually going on with the RCID. I think the allegation was that they were pushing off investments until that whole thing blew over right there. I mean, look, cite as many reasons as you want. You knew Epic was coming. You knew it was going to be a big hit. I know there were question marks about whether or not this area could support a combined 7 theme parks from the big 2, right? Because remember when Animal Kingdom actually opened, they saw some cannibalization at their own park. So it's like, okay, maybe we'll just hold the phone when it comes to new parks in this area right here. Well, guess what? The world population, the United States population, I mean, the increases from 1998 when Animal Kingdom actually opened, well, things have changed, right? There are more people to serve, more guests that want to escape in these worlds right here. And Universal proved that, yeah, this area will support another gate. And I mean, double-digit gains year over year, every single quarter since this thing's open. I mean, it's just a tremendous success.
And that's what this park limited in its capacity. Like imagine what this looked like if Epic didn't have the wait time issues it has, and they were at 40,000 guests they could get in the park per day. It would be bigger. So what's even more interesting is how much they've left on the table from this, and how much room they have to grow. And I'll tell you another interesting part, and it's anecdotal, but I know 2 travel agency owners that specialize in Disney vacations, and they both told me last summer, they expected, and I think you're seeing more people split time that between Disney and Universal more than you have before.
Of course.
What they noticed was a lot of families were booking week-long vacations at Universal. They weren't splitting time. And I think they even said, one of them said about at least half, the other one said about 60%. And these were people that had been to Disney before that were going over to Universal. So I think there is a split there. And I think it's become much more the norm now for a Orlando vacation maybe you spent 5 days at Disney before, now it's 3 and 2 or something. Like, you're getting a split in there. And part of me wonders if Disney pricing their hotels as low as they have, they recognize people are going to go over to Universal, but maybe they can just stay. When you make it cheap enough, they just stay on property. And at the very least, you're getting the hotel, booking stay. You're probably going to buy some food and things like that. Like, that could be part of the strategy as well. Just recognizing kind of the reality of the situation of where this is right now.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, I think to be competitive on the hotel side is very, very interesting, right? Because if you can actually have a competitive price point right there, you might actually have people actually making Universal hotels their home base for everything Orlando. So maybe you don't capture them the entire time, but they're staying on property instead of maybe staying at Disney and then going out elsewhere, especially when it comes to the convenience factor, as some of these hotels are pretty close to, iDrive and so forth, right? It just becomes that much more marketable for people looking to settle down. And it's so interesting that you say that, Jared, because my goodness, what did we hear Mark Wardbury say actually in the lead up to Epic Universe? We are creating a 7-day destination with this park. My goodness, that was actually a cheat. I didn't think they would, but it sounds like they did. And look, I mean, it got Disney to jump. And that's what we want as a consumer. We want these companies to be in this arms race because guess what, folks? We get better attractions, we get better theme parks, we get better experiences that we can actually glean from this. And on your point, Jared, about hotel stays and the valuation there, the Real Ventures actually comes in here. Remember, for 1 month. Thank you so much. Remember, for a month. Do appreciate that. The Helios currently is discounted around $200 plus. That's significant right there. I mean, who wouldn't want to stay at the Helios for that kind of price? Man, that's a pretty good value as far as I'm concerned. Hawaii Dragon Star also coming in here with the $5. Thank you so much. Is it just me? Under Iger, Disney, quote, could do no wrong. And fake it, people believe it, not make it. Now they are more transparent and people support more. Well, yeah, because guess what? They're doing the thing that we want them to do. Mm-hmm. You don't have to basically lie to us. You can just kind of tell us how it is. We understand the game that's going on. We have a much more savvy consumer market out there that can pick up on these trends, that can pick up on all these things that are actually happening. You can't pull the wool over people's eyes. And yeah, maybe you'll be able to do that for a little bit of time with investors, but guess what? Investors are getting savvy as well. So that's a big thing right there. Now, you talked about the levers, right, that Universal could pull in order to get people into Epic Universe. For example, I think Marvin Montanaro brought this up, but annual pass holders, right? Annual pass holders have been they've been dying to get into Epic Universe, and so that's another level they can pull. If in fact there is some attrition when it comes to attendance at Epic Universe, they just open up to annual pass holders, we're back on, kind of thing, right? Mm-hmm. Interesting things happening on Disney's end when it comes to the issues plaguing them and maybe overseas through higher gas prices, right? We all know what we're talking about right here. Hopefully we do, because I can't mention it on YouTube. Just, think about it. Boardwalk Times, Disney CFO Hugh Johnston says Walt Disney World bookings are pacing up strongly. Johnston also notes that there could be changes in consumer behavior due to rising gas prices, but that every business has levers to deal with that. I believe, let's say here, Hugh claims that they haven't seen the impact on guest behavior from rising gas costs yet. That's by 5L here. No need to panic right now, at least. Yet, Hugh also reassures us that if they did see any impacts, they have plenty of levers to pull. This by 5L, like I said, and Boardwalk Times providing us this information from the actual earnings call. Heard it myself. And I think a lot of investors, Jared, are a little bit uneasy about what's actually going on in the Middle East specifically because, right, I think a lot of people remember the oil crisis of the 70s and how that really did impact Walt Disney World because it was a destination resort, and when nobody can actually get there via, high airline fares, which, by the way, might happen again with now Spirit going under the way it is, and with these rising oil prices, it could really affect visitations to Walt Disney World, to Disneyland, and maybe even operating costs as it relates to maybe their cruise lines, right? If you're going to have so many cruise liners out there, well, they all take fuel. They got to go, right? Yep. It's all of these things. I know there are some cost mitigation strategies that could be implemented in any one of these industries in order to keep those costs down. But I mean, do you think Disney can pull enough levers in order to make up for some of these revenue shortfalls as created by rising gas prices?
They probably can. My guess would be even more discounts, or the, get a day free if you book. Like, there's probably a plenty of discounts they could apply. Like, if you could figure out how much more it is on average for the average family with gas prices, let's say they're driving, you could probably figure out ways and even advertise the savings that way. Funny enough, Comcast had the same questions. They had the similar answer, which was like they hadn't seen any impact of it yet. And I think that's one reason why maybe the stock price has taken a little bit of jump for Disney is I think the investors were assuming there's going to be more impact from the gas prices on some of the theme park end of things, and that at least hasn't showed as of yet. So I think that could have been one of the reasons as to why maybe they had a little bit of a spike today. But yeah, when he says levers, I mean, you're talking discounts, or just, maybe, I mean, we got to remember around 9/11 is whenever they introduced the free Disney dining plan. So you can always reintroduce that as maybe, I mean, that thing's changed so many times since they initially released it. But if you release something closer to what the old version was, that could be a way to drive some stuff. So I'm sure they probably still do have ways to do it. The optics are strange, though, the whole time with Disney raising prices, but then offering these massive discounts at the same time.
So strange. Yeah, it's so weird.
It's a weird dynamic, but, I guess the big question is how long does the issue linger on? If it's relatively solved soon, it's a non-issue. If it continues to linger on, then I do think these things start impacting both Disney and Universal eventually. They just kind of haven't seen it yet, it seems.
Yeah, I like this. Disney tanker ship refueling in Venezuela. Yeah, this was possible.
Their own ship out there in the Straits. Like, it's good now. We got to figure it out.
We're good. No, we have that deal with morale. We're just fine. We can pass through like nobody else. No, it's really kind of fascinating because it could really legitimately impact their business. And like you said, Jared, you brought up obviously what happened in September of 2001, obviously, and I will say that incident right there. I mean, there were whole wings of the Grand Floridian just lights out. I mean, it was crazy what you saw the company do in order to stay afloat right there. It was a really, really dubious time. There are obviously levers that they can pull, but I thought it was really fascinating that they would actually take that question head on. I think it's good because I think a lot of investors had a lot of concerns regarding that. Now, Jared, I know you're a sports guy, and you're probably the only person on YouTube I can actually talk to about this because I tell you what, nobody's into sports. It's just the eyes glaze over or whatever, but it does relate to this earnings call, folks. And, when you're spending, 41% of your entertainment budget on sports contracts and so forth, and the facilitation of that, it's significant when it comes to that portfolio and how much money goes around for various investments like the parks. Here you go. Disney CFO Hugh Johnston, despite poor times here, on Disney ESPN's relationship with the NFL. Johnston confirms that they haven't engaged in the early renewal process, but expects to be in the business with the NFL for years to come. Okay, this is very, very interesting because the NFL, Roger Goodell, the commissioner of the NFL, that is, he's always looking for more money, and he's looking for a lot of money. So much, in fact, that Disney actually, if you have been keeping track of this story, actually, in last year, they confirmed that there was a deal in which the NFL would actually own, I think, like 10% of ESPN, which was very significant, right? And then ESPN and Disney would get access to a lot of the NFL's content repository, including Red Zone, NFL Network, and a couple of other major stations, brands, products that the NFL was actually producing on its own, which was significant. But Jared, and they there has been some speculation here that that ESPN is going to stay put for now. A lot of investors kind of want to see that spun off. Some investors want to see that stay, and so forth. What say you on all this stuff? Because I mean, this is a big deal here. I mean, I would imagine that this new NFL contract would be, billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars in order to facilitate. Now, I think Hugh and Josh, they're hoping that the deal that they've actually carved out for ESPN and so forth, and the ownership of some of their products, could sweeten the deal just a little bit, and they can go light on them. But I don't know if that's going to happen. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's interesting because I thought the same thing back when they made that deal. I'm like, that's interesting that they're gonna kind of have this shared ownership of it in a way. It'd be hard for me to imagine Disney almost is in a position where they have to pay whatever the NFL is asking, because if they lose NFL rights, I mean, ESPN's going to take a huge hit. And
That
then
thing's over.
how do you do the NFL with ESPN if you don't actually have the games on there? Like, not that there's any evidence of it, but it does seem a little bit of quid pro quo where it's like, hey, we do this and we get a little bit of a, we get first dibs or whatever it is. You're right. It's going to be, I don't even know how expensive. It's going to be in the billions and billions to renew that. And you're in a situation where what is Disney going to do? Just say no? Because if you don't have NFL, and that's that we've talked about before as well, like, sports is still something that's holding up linear, but it's expensive and your profit margins aren't nearly as good. But I think they look at it as a way to get people onto their platform that they can cross sell to and things like that. It's definitely interesting. I get the feeling though that like they'll retain it. I don't know if it'll be at a discount, but I would find it hard to imagine why the NFL would go into business with ESPN if they're then not going to put their games on a network that they partially own. So, I feel like that's probably what would happen. But it is interesting.
It's a bet.
Yeah, well, it's like these contracts always get more expensive. They don't get cheaper. And so I don't know what they paid last go around, but I imagine it's going to be significantly more this go around to renew that.
I would think so. I mean, that's it's going to be a lot. I mean, look at the NBA, right? I mean, what Adam Silver was able to grab from that is crazy numbers that Disney had to.
Ratings for the NBA are not great either. I don't know if they're
paid. That's the scary part. It's like, oh my goodness, the NBA is not like the biggest, name in sports, but holy cow, they were able to get, hundreds of billions of dollars almost in deals there. And I know, NBC took on a large portion of that, obviously that being Comcast and so forth, and Disney lost out in some regards there, which obviously is not preferred. But I mean, this is, I don't know what this is going to look like. It's going to be expensive. I mean, Roger Goodell, he's going to get his. He always gets his. And so
what's interesting? The NFL is technically a non-profit organization. That is technically what they are as a business, and it's crazy, but that is technically how they are set up as their business model. Well, you know what's crazy, and I don't know if ESPN still has Major League Baseball or not, but baseball, like really, when you're talking about sports, it's either college sports, NFL, and I guess NBA, and that's really the major players now, because you really don't have big MLB stuff now, because I think that's all tied up with Bollies and stuff now. So
something like that,
maybe the NHL, but like you really just have very few of these up the top. So it's like, if you don't have the NFL, I mean, I guess they still have college, but they would have I would imagine a significant drop in ESPN value without an NFL deal in place.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, it's significant drop in value, but also too, like you said, there's less of these sports entertainment companies to go around, and obviously limited coverage and all of that. So it's really prized, and especially in the streaming area and the broadcast area. Let's just be honest with that, because that's the only thing keeping broadcast television alive at this point. And streaming, it's a big driver right there. Like live sports events. I mean, we've seen Netflix, get hundreds of millions of eyeballs on their content and so forth. So it's a big deal. Radio coming in here. Thank you so much coming on in. ESPN is definitely regretting the massive deal that they made with the WWE broadcasting their premium live events. Well, I mean,
I heard some rumblings that WWE might be in some trouble because of TKO. I don't know how real that. I don't keep up with wrestling, but I saw some article that was saying that there might have been an emergency meeting at WWE because of TKO financial. Again, that's just a speculation or rumor that I saw, but it does make you wonder how much money they spent for WWE. Apparently in that same report, they were saying that Disney and who was the other one? Is it Netflix or somebody hasn't been maybe real happy with the WWE deal thus far.
Where's Marvin Montanaro when you need him? He's all on the wrestling stuff, man.
He does. Yeah, I watch wrestling like 1998, I think. It was during the NWO thing. That was the last time I really kept up with wrestling, but I know that deal was pretty lucrative, if I remember.
Gotcha.
Correctly. But
gotcha. Well, to round out this thing here, I want to go ahead and talk about the IP stuff. So I don't really have a slide for this, I don't think, but essentially, Josh DiMauro brought up the idea of essentially content mining from their existing IP, and for investors, this has been kind of a point of contention actually recently because they're starting to notice that Disney's not the IP factory it once was in terms of like creating and generating IP that really stands the test of time and really gets people in the door. Like, for example, there are a litany of examples in the Bob Iger era of this, but like the various Marvel sub-franchises, for example, or even like Frozen and I don't know, it's a gamut. Tangled. Okay, yeah. There's been a lot of them. But Disney just cannot start an original franchise to save their life. Now, they had a couple of mentions of hoppers, but folks, guys, that's sub $400 million. I mean, that's nothing. I don't even know if it covers its costs to actually, make that thing and actually put it out in theater. So who the heck knows? Do you think I think the thing that that I took away from this call that I wasn't so optimistic about, the one thing that I was like, ooh, it's still kind of a problem, is their IP factory right here. Do you agree with that sentiment, Jared? And is there anything that maybe they could do to placate investors or maybe turn things around? I don't know if there's an easy fix out there.
I don't think it's an easy fix. It's one of those things where if you start implementing things now to have original IPs, which, I mean, clearly there hasn't been, there's been a few things that have hit here and there, but for the most part, it's pretty bare. You're not going to see the results of that for a while. I mean, even if you started today and say, we're making major changes and this is what, we're doing going forward. How long does it take to make an animated movie? 3 years, if not longer. Maybe AI makes some a little quicker. So that's one of those things where you won't see maybe what's happening here between him and Dana Walden for some time, but it is an issue. Because it's like you're just going to do sequel after sequel, which they're going to do sequels, which I get why you would do it, but you can't make Toy Story 10. You got to at some point have something new that pops up that gets some notoriety, which is why I've been kind of surprised at how much they haven't really delved more into Frozen stuff, because that's been so lucrative for them. But even in the parks, it's kind of been slower to come around, at least domestically. But yeah, I mean, I don't even know that it's not an easy thing. And it's like, how do you mandate creativity? You got to have people
exactly
that you think are talented in this area. And I think ever since John Lasseter left, Pixar has not been the same, clearly.
Nope.
I think Pete Docter is trying to make changes. I will give him that. From everything I've heard him say, I think he's trying. I don't know about his creativity end. I did see Hoppers. It was actually it was a better movie that they put out as original movie than the last few years, I will say. I thought it was a pretty decent movie. It didn't perform that great, but that's also part of their issue is you got to earn back the trust of the audience on these new things. I think that's been Disney's problem, is not having the audience trust. And that's something that just takes time. Like, you got to consistently put these things out to earn it back, and you're not going to get it after, even if Hoppers was a huge hit. I don't think that would necessarily mean Pixar is back where it was. I think it's just, you got to have multiple of these movies or shows that come out that really showcase that you're still able to do these things. And I guess we'll see. I don't know. I'm hopeful, I suppose, but I just don't know where and which direction they're going to take this.
It's such a feast and famine situation too, because it's like, Hoppers comes out, what, sub 400 million? Nothing. Inside Out 2 comes out. It's, one of the biggest animated movies of all time. It's like, what in the world? But that also goes back to the strength of those franchises, obviously, and when they were actually established by really competent storytellers, which, by the way, Disney just doesn't have a lot of right now, especially in the Jennifer Lee era. I guess post now, but they've really just did so much damage on the inside. I mean, definitely check out the D-Files, folks, if you haven't. That's going to be on Film Threat by Alan Ng. Some great stuff right there to learn the behind the scenes of what actually happened within the animation factory at Disney. Not good at all, especially in the post John Lasseter era. It's where we get Wish and Strange World and all those box office bombs right there. And this is why, honestly, Bob Iger, when it came back, he said, "Hey, we're going to restart the content engine again. Here's Toy Story 5 and Moana 2 and all." He went sequel heavy because he knew that original filmmaking was just not part of this current engine's repertoire. It's just he knew they weren't able to do it. And that's why they went so sequel heavy. And I mean, it worked out at least for the short term, but will that work for the long term? And when you look at franchises for the parks, what you can adapt, look at Monsters. I mean, I'm sorry, look at Walt Disney World's litany of different attractions that they're getting. Monsters Inc., for example. I mean, when did that actually come out? Like,
right.
Cars, 2007, right? I mean, it's these franchises that are kind of long in the tooth. What is going to be this generation's whatever? I don't really know. I think what is it? Puck News, Matt Bellany, right? He interviewed some kids recently. I guess part 3 of this ongoing series or whatever, to see what they felt about some of the narratives out there in the entertainment intelligentsia. And he asked him about Star Wars, right? And I guess one of the kids were like, "Man, anything that is put out now is just trash or something." It's just really kind of like
the honesty.
You look at Mandalorian Grogu, and it's might be on a sub $80 million opening, which is crazy because Solo opened at $84 million back in the day. Go ahead, Jared.
No, I mean, I have 2 small kids that I can tell you, there's so much more stuff out there now for, you're talking about a lot of this stuff with the Disney Renaissance it's a different era. And I don't know, if they're able to do something similar, it won't look like it did in the 90s, just due to the sheer amount of decentralization you have of entertainment. But it's, like you said, in the short term, you can do sequels, but the long term is you got to get some new stuff going. And then that's where you even talk about Lucasfilm and what they're going to do or not going to do with Star Wars. The stuff in the park is a good, like I said before, a short-term thing to bring in the original trilogies. And it's a great point. I think Orange Grove 55's pointed out before, the movies and entertainment is what drives the theme park. So if you don't have new IPs that are catching on, you're kind of left in the parks to do a Cars or a Monsters Inc. It does show the lasting power of some of these franchises, how big they are, that they're still relevant to some degree, even decades later. But how these things age, if you don't, it's kind of like having a sports team that doesn't have a good minor league system. You can go get free agents, but for the most part, that doesn't tend to be a winning strategy without a good amount of, new talent coming in. And I think that is their problem right now, is figuring out what are the reasons were. Maybe they're hamstringed by the ideology, whatever there was they were doing. You got to revamp this, but at the same time, this is going to take time. And I think that's the thing about this is in the short term, you're going to see sequels, but can they do this under this amount of pressure to really get back the what Pixar was known for? Really, yeah. That's the question.
It's a big question, and I know a lot of investors are really upset about the fact that this company is at the same place stock price wise that they were at 10 years ago. They've been languishing in this $100 a share area for so long, and one of the things that's keeping them there is just their quality. The quality as is associated with original franchises and even their existing ones has not been good. Like Jared said, you have to earn that trust right there. It's going to take a while, and, guess what? Dana Walton, she's the creative head of this, so we'll see how that all ends up shaping out for the Walt Disney Company, especially in the modern era. But we have to get onto some theme park-related news right here, Jared, because, man, I love talking about earnings calls and all of that. I absolutely love it when I know our audience is like, hey, wait a minute. The thumbnail said necessary downgrades. What's going on? Well, let's go ahead and get into that in just a little bit. If you were looking at the earnings call, they actually said that Disney's investments in the parks increased from $4.3 billion to $5 billion. Let's see what the quality of those investments were when it came to some of our favorite existing attractions coming off from refurb. Big Thunder opened this weekend, actually. I believe it was this past Sunday, to be precise. And look at the crowd right there. Everybody was looking to get their hands on the wildest ride in the wilderness out there. Boy, was it a wild ride on that first day. Not just from this photo, which, by the way, the line for this actually topped out to, I believe, 145 minutes there. So triple digits. Big time stuff. Remember, this was closed for 18 months. I mean, for all of 2025, basically, you couldn't actually go on this ride. So it was a big moment to actually have this back in the park, especially for a park starred for so many attractions now that Rivers of America is unfortunately gone, and the replacements won't be up for quite a while there. Well, unfortunately for them, it did get a little wild. Just not the way that they wanted. Here you go from Scott Spillers. A little mishap this afternoon during Big Thunder Mountain's first day of operation after a long refurb. Yes, there was a small fire over there at the on the load area of Big Thunder Mountain Railroad right there. You can see, not good. I guess those LIMs, or at least maybe their brakes or propulsion systems, not doing very good at all, at least on the first day. And that, well, mandated that had to put it out during the fire with the fire extinguisher. Thankfully, that cast member was actually there in order to do that, but not very good. Jared, for your first day right there, I believe the attraction was closed for 5 hours there, so opening day, that's not good either. A lot of capacity actually lost from that, and it did reopen later that night, which is good, but it didn't reopen first thing in the morning on the subsequent morning. Now, I do believe it's operational, and it's fine, and everything's good, but Jared, no good opening with a fire there.
Not the thing you want to see on your opening day of especially a ride like Big Thunder. That's like a staple of the Disney parks. Whatever the cause of this, I've seen some speculation about maybe the testing wasn't done thoroughly enough or with enough of a load, because it could have been those brakes doing that. But I will say, it's like, is it a huge deal on its own that there was this issue? Not necessarily on its own, but when you start looking at the broader thing of recent Imagineering, you talk about Tiana's Bayou Adventure, you talk about the Epcot overhaul, like questions going into, like, you know, Bruce Vaughn even talking about trying to bridge that information gap with AI. You got the Imagineers that have left over the years. There's lots of questions around Imagineering. And if you're looking at these lands they're building and, like, you know, I'm hopeful for them and people are sitting there like, we want these things to be great. You start seeing things like this reopen, and it's having issues like this doesn't help the image of Imagineering, I will say. You know, from everything I've heard, I mean, what you talked about in the live stream too, it's like the ride seems maybe even a little quicker, definitely smoother with a new track, but the optics of this are not great. And I think that's the thing about this, is like the optics alone, like in isolation, is it a huge deal? Like, you know, parks, the new lands have issues and new rides all the time. But when you start looking at it as a whole, it kind of becomes a trend where you kind of start having a little bit of doubts about what is modern day Imagineering kind of capable of at this point.
Right, and that's really a big question mark, especially coming off of the disastrous Epcot overhaul. I mean, geez Louise, like, that's no good, right? Community Core Hall and all that. Tiana's Bayou Adventure, like, that replaced Splash Mountain, guys, come on! And, well, it just didn't live up to the expectations as set by its predecessor attraction, which is most unfortunate, right? I think a lot of people were looking forward to that and saying, hey, this could be really, really good, and I just don't think it turned out the way that, you know, really met Disney's expectations, really. And the fans especially right there. I want to go into the quality of this attraction, though. So once people got through, you know, the line and actually got on the ride, past the fire there, what do they actually have in store for them? Well, as you alluded to, Jared, some people were actually saying or suggesting that the ride was slower. And so I, you know, did my due diligence, as I often do right here. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to figure this out. Is this ride slower? Is this ride faster? I want to know. And so I took like 10 POVs, compared them all. And it's difficult to line them up from start to finish on this test right here, because the lift hills are at various speeds. From the POVs that I saw post refurb, right, the ones that were actually taken on Sunday there, the lift hills were slower than previous, right? And so that's going to throw your timing off if you're comparing, like, you know, ride length or whatever. But really, I think honestly, people are most concerned about the speed. What I did was I went ahead and eliminated a lot of variables by just having it tested between the crest of the second lift hill and when it actually goes into that kind of mine shaft on its way to the third lift hill. And so I did it by audio. So when you hear that kind of you know, like clackety clack of the what is it, anti-rollback, right?
Yeah.
When you actually hear it end, and you can hear it, it's very distinctive. It's like, you know, it kind of goes up in speed right there, that's when I tracked the speeds of the various coasters themselves, because it was the one consistent thing found within all 10 POVs. And according to my tests, when looking at the POVs side by side, you can see that lead engine right there. That's going to be our frame of reference that we're going to use for this. The post-reverb versions of this attraction completed that limited circuit faster than pre-reverb every single time. Now, it wasn't a huge amount, but it was slightly in the favor of a post-reverb. So I can confirm that's this is a reporting that actually Scott Gooston had in his subset article that he had on this, that the attraction was faster, slightly faster than before. I can confirm that is the case, at least according to my testing. So that is good, very, very good. Also, too, lower height requirement, also good for families, right? That means more people can actually enjoy this attraction, especially if you're denied access on Tunes by Adventure, which, like, is that a 40-inch height requirement over there? What is that again? I can't remember.
I think it's 40. Let me look real quick.
Yeah, let me look real quick as well. I don't want to give out misinformation right here as I'm going on.
Yeah, it's 40 inches on both coasts.
Okay. So there you go. Perfect. So if you're denied access to Tunes by Adventure, well, you can go ahead and stop over there at Big Thunder Mountain Railroad and ride this attraction. Yes, also heard more comfy seats. Yes, indeed, you heard correct there, Remy. There are more comfortable seats, and that's one of the reasons why it had that height requirement lowered 2 inches, which is very, very good. That is absolutely fantastic. Going from 40 to 38 is very, very good. Now, there are some things that weren't so good, obviously, with the new track. You know, it's not as wild as it used to be, which is most unfortunate, and that maybe additional friction might have also caused that kind of slower performance right there on that point of the circuit right there, which is kind of interesting to note, but a lot of people were kind of finding it to be too smooth. And I will say, after the 2014 overhaul of Disneyland's Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, it saw that attraction down for 15 months. I actually felt the same thing. It was like, man, it's not quite as wild as it used to be. It's very, very smooth. Don't worry, folks. I think it will be an experience I think you will enjoy, but maybe not quite the same as you once remembered it right there. However, when it came to Disneyland Resort's version of this attraction and when it was overhauled, there were a number of additions that they made and a lot of enhancements that they made that, hey, you know what? When it comes to quality of ride, it was objectively better. Unfortunately, though, I can't necessarily say the same for Magic Kingdom's version of the attraction. And Jared, I guess this gets into some of the things that maybe you and I both didn't like, at least what we're seeing right here. Now, we haven't obviously ridden these versions of the attraction. I'm just going off of a lot of video that I've combed through. But the most disappointing thing, gotta say it right off the bat, the finale.
Yeah.
What were they thinking?
You know, I'm betting, and I think you had mentioned this as well, the Disneyland finale is great. And that was one of the things I was really wanting from this, especially if you're going to close this thing down for 16, 18 months. But you even guys have talked about how out there, sometimes all those pieces don't work all the time. Maybe it needs more maintenance to upkeep that projection mapping and all that stuff. I'm betting that this was looked at as a simpler solution, that it's better than what was there, given the fact that there was nothing there before, that they figured out a way to do this that wasn't going to require potentially as much maintenance. Because I think Masloom as well, and you guys, I know you and OG had talked about, I don't know a lot about him from what I've heard about him, very about operations and like wanting things to run much better. Part of that might be maintenance and wanting something that doesn't require as much upkeep. Like, this scene's so cool. And
That's so
like,
cool, man.
It's a really cool effect. And the one at Disney World that I've seen, I'm going to ride this on Sunday, so I'll be able to give some firsthand information next week about this. But it's better than what it was, but it's still not as nearly as good as that. And sadly, I think it probably comes down to either not wanting to invest in the tech or wanting something that's just simpler to operate. It would be my guess.
I was really, really sad. I'll go ahead and see if I can bring the new version of it up for you guys, because you guys got to see it. I mean, it's most unfortunate because people have been waiting for so long for Disneyland's pyrotechnic finale to come make its way to Walt Disney World. I mean, now I guess it's something over 10 years that they've been waiting for this. And you would think with an 18-month downtime for this refurb, you would actually think that you would be getting it. Unfortunately, that is simply not the case. In fact, what we have in its place actually is this kind of gold nugget that's revealed right there. It's the only way I can actually describe it for you. Let me see if I can actually pull it up.
You don't get to grab the gold. Like, here's the gold, but you don't get to have it. We're gonna run back. By the way,
right?
Are we sure that the fire that broke out wasn't the fact that they were trying to do some sort of Back to the Future homage to this? You know, it's a train, and you know, you got the fire. I mean, I'm just saying, maybe they're thinking we implement these two worlds.
Yeah. If we just get it up to 88 miles per hour, buddy, we can go back in time, even in the Old West. Yes, that would be fantastic. That would be amazing. No, I don't think so. I think that was a genuine fluke right there. Let me see if I can find it in my roll here. I have it somewhere, folks. Sorry, guys. I do apologize. I have the whole ride through provided by Drew the Disney Dude, by the way, which, by the way, if you have not subscribed to Drew the Disney Dude, you have to. He is a must subscribe for sure. Yeah, it's somewhere in here. I just can't find it right now, which is very weird for me because usually I'm on top of this stuff. You know that. Let's see right here.
You do way more groundwork, legwork than I do, so I respect it. I respect the game.
Well, I very much try. You can see
reducing costs is not necessarily one's favorite thing to do in running a company. It is a necessary thing to do often.
that was the old way of doing things, and well, it might be the new way of doing things as well.
Music with Bob as he talks. That's an extra dramatic element to it. By the way, did you catch during the earnings call, Josh Gate had to give it obligatory how great Bob Iger was before they started?
Yeah, I knew that was coming because
it's got to be in the contract for at least like 12 months. He's got to say this while Bob's in the building. It's like you got to acknowledge Bob. I was like, okay, fine. Bob was great. Okay, let's get on with this.
Bob was fantastic. He was so good. Like, okay. Yeah, he's just a fantastic human being. Yeah. It's all that and more. They just had to kiss the ring before actually going live with this stuff, which is exhausting. But c'est la vie. That's how these things go right here. Where is the friggin' thing? No, it's DLR. Man, I am so sorry, guys. I usually have all of this stuff ready for you, but I don't yet, and that's really, really weird for me. I'm skipping through right here to get you some of this stuff. Here you go. I think this is what we're looking at right here. Again, Drew the Disney Dude, actually providing this right here. Go to subscribe to his YouTube channel if you have not already, and his X, which you should be subscribed to already. Here you go. This is the new scene right here. Now, there is an audio track. I tried to find the raw so I can let you hear it, but it's just this kind of reveal that happens, and then you're out of there. And it's this is that necessary downgrade that is so weird that these attractions keep incurring here. It's just not good, Jared. I'm sorry, it's just not worth the wait.
Yeah, I love Big Thunder is one of my favorite rides, and I was really, this is one thing they never, I had a feeling this was coming because they never mentioned this in any of the stuff they were talking about the refurb of this. I'm like, okay, what about the finale scene? And they never would say anything. I mean, if we don't get it now, it's probably never going to happen. And unfortunately, I think it's a lot of the, I think we've talked about before, and I'm sure you have as well, about the maintenance at Disney has not been, what it has been historically. And if you're looking at cutting costs, which I think a lot of in the parks, it's like not only increasing revenues, but cutting costs where you can. Maintenance happens there a lot. If they're looking at Disney, and I don't know, I know OG's talk about the one at Disneyland, sometimes parts of it don't work. I'm sure they got to work on it. It's probably, and that's a sad thing, it's probably just strictly a cost thing or an upkeep thing. And I just don't think that's something, I think Disney in its former iterations would have gone above and beyond to provide the guest experience would have been the number one thing and not as much about the cost of these things. And I think that's kind of become a little bit, maybe even the cost of things is much more looked at as important versus the guest experience. And it's just these little things. It's not, is it a huge deal? No, but it's a little thing. And especially when it exists in other parks and we talk about overseas version of Big Thunder is even more impressive. It's just, you're going to go through this entire refurb. You're getting a new track. The ride hopefully is better, but not having some of these small details, I think they're important because they used to be really important to Disney. And it just doesn't feel like the small details are just as important as they used to be, which is unfortunate.
It is really unfortunate, and when it comes to small details, there were a surprising amount of small details that actually left out from this. Unfortunately, we've talked about this before, Jared. This lack of institutional memory, not having the history as handed down by former Imagineers and maybe former historians and so forth that actually contribute to so many of these projects and all of that, or at least used to. Now you just don't have that, and it was really evident. Made especially evident by Disney Cicerone, I do believe, on X, who posted this. I want to go ahead and share this with all of you because this surprised me. I thought I picked this thing clean here when it came to my gripes, but Cicerone actually came in here with even more that Disney kind of whiffed on when it came to Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. Here we go. Go ahead and turn this up right here. Oop, we have music coming in somewhere. Uh-oh. I have so many tabs open.
I thought I had a lot of tabs. I'm like, my gosh, you got to have like 30 gigs of RAM in that thing.
A little bit more than that, but well, you have to when it comes to this kind of stuff right here. Yeah. Unfortunately, when you have so many tabs, it's hard to keep track of them, and that's apparently what has happened to me. Let me go ahead and share it in another way then, in order to provide this point to you so that you guys aren't waiting on me. Here we go. Let's go ahead and see if we can put this up on screen.
Imagineering missed the mark in these 5 major ways for Big Thunder Mountain's new changes. First of all, I love that they took the bat idea that was originally Mark Davis's and then Chris Runko's and made the scene even more elaborate. But the beauty of this nod to the rainbow caverns from Mine Train Through Nature's Wonderland is a little bit lost when it turns completely red. Second, it's great to see the town of Tumbleweed get some love, but I'm hoping the missing possums that were also a little bit of a tribute to Mark Davis find their way back to the tree. Next, we have the finale of the Big Gold Nugget. While this is a cute idea, it actually leans more into the storyline for Disneyland Paris and their Lucky Nugget a little more than the original one for Walt Disney World. Maybe that's what they were going for, but the fun part about all the different versions of Big Thunder is that they all have their own unique storyline. Walt Disney World's story has always been a flash flood, a concept rooted in Mark Davis's lost Western River Expedition ride that was planned for this area. The flash flood is why we see rocks strewn about in the queue, the geysers, and the town of Tumbleweed underwater. And honestly, I was really hoping that they would lean into that concept more in this third lift hill. Also, a small detail here, but it matters, Walt Disney World has always featured safety lanterns with wire mesh over the flame in the mines of this attraction to lend authenticity. Miners would not have used tubular lanterns deep in a mine because it was too risky to have open flame. So it's a shame to see that the Imagineers changed that detail and lost that little piece of authenticity. But to me, the most egregious change, and the one I hope is just temporary, is the removal of this crane that used to be right before the final lift hill. It was personally designed by set designer Pat Burke, who was the one that acquired all of the antique mining equipment for Big Thunder. He put a version of this crane in every Big Thunder that exists, and to see it's been removed from this one is truly heartbreaking indeed.
That's pretty rough right there. I was pretty surprised that I didn't pick up on, maybe
Here's
even
a
half
question.
of that.
Given what we were talking about with the knowledge gap in Imagineering, how much do you think they're aware of the history, specifically, let's say, of Big Thunder? And like, that's where I start to wonder about these things. Like, if they're not told to them, do these Imagineers even know about these things? And again, the small details are things that, like, I've done behind the keys tour, and it's like the detail that would go into like the transition into lands and the music fading in it, like even trash cans having certain colors that something guests would probably never recognize what it is, but they would go that far with the immersion and creating the story of the land. It's one of those things that's a small thing, but it's like these are the details that made Disney unique and what they were able to do in the theme parks. And it seems like just they're getting lost and more. And even the lantern thing, yeah, you could say that's nitpicky, but that's something Disney used to do. And I've always said too, it's Disney, they're judged today off the things that they set the standard in theme parks.
Correct.
The things that they did. And I just think that they just don't have that level of detail anymore, which I do think is hopefully changes. But as it currently stands, I haven't seen anything in recent history where I'm like, the details really matter on these things as much. And especially on a ride like this that did have so much history behind it, you can definitely start seeing it in the refurb, I think.
Yeah, I mean that's the most unfortunate part, and this is the reason why we've spent 30 minutes on this, guys. And by the way, we also did a much even larger discussion with OG there as part of a collaboration that we did here on Vash Sky ParkCast and Jared from Capture the Magic. We did a collaboration for a video on OG's channel right there. So if you are subscribed to OG, you should see it. Obviously, if you're subscribed to Capture the Magic, you should see it. Subscribe to this channel. Just go down a little bit, you'll see collaborations. You see it right there for even more info on this topic. But you're exactly right there, Jared. The loss of this institutional memory, the loss of this history, I think keeps them from being the real noteworthy, trendsetters that they were before, right? Because things were done one way for a reason. Mm-hmm. When you lose that, you lose your edge. Because now you have to relearn those lessons again. And sometimes you have to learn it, behind another leader in the industry. I mean, I think we all know who we're thinking of, Universal, right? Who, by the way, was able to gather a lot of institutional memory when so many Imagineers left Disney and went to Universal. So it's really unfortunate to have this happen, especially with such a monumental institution as WDI was, but it is indeed happening. Now you have Bruce Vaughn actually going out and saying, hey, we're putting this new AI together called Jarvis, and it's going to be able to go through all this history for all our Imagineers. And it's like, ooh, that's an admission you have an institutional memory problem. Yep. And I don't know if AI is going to necessarily solve that. That's what they're doing right now. One last thing about this that I want to go ahead and bring up before moving on to our next attraction that has seen a, quote, necessary downgrade. Sand. Yes, sand. You can see right here. In the previous versions of Big Thunder Mountain Railroad leading up to its refurbishment right here, you can see this shot right here. And I want you to go take note of the tracks and this kind of ridge right here and the tracks that this current train is on right now. You can see there's this kind of crimson, almost gravel type quality to the rockwork and the kind of ground covering that you actually see around and in between these tracks and so forth. Very, very good. It's very, very natural. Well, now we have sand being put all over this ride track right here. And it looks awful. And it's the entire ride track. I mean, the sand is everywhere. Now, it wouldn't be so bad if, in fact, they got the right sand or the right gravel that would be appropriate for this kind of outcropping in this Utah-ish landscape that Big Thunder finds itself in. But this is like beach sand or construction sand that they just poured all over this thing. I don't understand this, Jared. Why did they do this? Now, my speculation is, I think I related to you earlier, my speculation is that when they were taking out the track in order to replace it, they couldn't necessarily undo their work. So to cover up the areas by which they actually remove this track from this massive structure, they fill it in with sand instead. That's the only thing I can conclude, because this is super distracting. It is everywhere. It's throughout the entire ride track and even into areas leading up to the queue and so forth. I mean, it's just all over the place and it doesn't fit at all. What say you?
Yeah, that is weird to me, and I don't know why. I lean more towards maybe there was there was some rumors that this was behind in its construction. There was a lot of rumors until they announced the reopening date. It was going to be delayed. It looks so much better right there. I guess maybe you could argue this is something to do with tying this into the cars area or maybe some other theming thing, but it seems odd because you're even seeing on the sides of the walls there. Like, it is all over the track. It's just, I don't know. I mean, I think your guess is as good as any that I have or I've heard. I have no clue why they would do it, but it definitely is weird. It doesn't make a lot of sense to why a mountain town would be covered in beach sand, essentially. But
yes, especially one suffering from a flood. So it's just like, what is going on here? You can see this is Scott Gustin's video that he posted of the attraction itself. You can see all along this ride track is this sand. You cannot escape it. It's not appropriate for this outcropping here. Look, I live in the desert, okay? I have seen outcroppings like this in mountains and so forth.
Sand.
I know my sand. It does not look like that. Yes, Anakin Skywalker. There you go. It'll keep him from riding for sure. Look, it's Is it the biggest thing in the world? No. But when you put it everywhere, now it becomes a big thing. I just don't know what they did right here. Could be cutbacks, could be something else. I have no idea. This was down for 18 months, though. Hey, when you look at 15 months of work as done to Disneyland's version of this attraction, they didn't put sand over there. Why is it okay for Magic Kingdom? I don't know. But apparently, that's what we're doing. Anyway, that is the wildest ride of the wilderness. Still the same ride. And maybe there are some enhancements there. But there are certainly caveats indeed, which is no good for a ride that is so beloved, that has so much history as connected to Magic Kingdom specifically right here. Obviously, it's one of Tony Baxter's greatest attractions and all of that. Great stuff. Super beloved. Awesome. Just wish they would have gotten it right. Unfortunately, I don't think they did.
You're right. It is all over that. I didn't know that one scene. It's all over every track. It's so strange.
Everywhere. It's everywhere. Check the POVs, folks. You will be surprised, shocked even, how much sand there is everywhere.
Yeah.
What happens when it blows? I don't know.
I was going to say, what if I mean, obviously, too much sand on the tracks would become an issue, I would assume, but I don't know.
I would assume so too.
And so what we've tried to do is really bring that shape language from the architecture.
But like what we love to talk about at WDI is shape language. And we often refer to shape language.
There's such iconic shape language in Spaceship Reverie attraction. We really wanted to make sure that we fused to that throughout the space.
Shape language.
Shape language. That's clearly what it. We just don't speak space or shape language. Bash.
That's it, right? We don't speak the shape language, so we don't understand it. But shape language looks like played a role right there. Freedom Seeker using his very own emoji right there, as granted to Sky Watchers. If you want to go ahead and get in on the shape language emoji fun and a whole lot more, become a Sky Watcher. Awesome stuff right there. Well, time to move on to our next necessary downgrade, this time over there at the Anaheim theme park, that being Disneyland. By the way, Renegade, they had a panel there, and somebody said that Disneyland was crap, and I'm not going to say who it was, but it was like, hey, you know what? If you go there, you'll know that it's not crap. Hey, Epic Universe might have a dozen attractions, but Disneyland has over 40, and it's awesome. I had to defend the honor there of all the Disneylanders out there.
I think we'll go next year. My wife's been before, but yeah, I wouldn't, even from the outside looking in, I wouldn't say Disneyland is crap by any means, but different layout for sure than Disney World, I think, undoubtedly.
Different layout for sure, very much packed in there. And look, I mean, listen, the resort as it exists right now at Walt Disney World, it cannot be understated how incredible it is. For Disneyland, well, there you go. That's what we got there. Oh my goodness, I'm missing a package there. Jared, I might have to have you hold the fort for just a second while I get that over here. My goodness gracious. I can't believe it. Why does that happen? Well, maybe it exists somewhere. All these technical issues, folks, I'm sorry. And this is what happens when you only get 2 hours of sleep. But over there on the West Coast, we saw the reopening of another attraction that was down for refreshment. This one not quite as long, that being Roger Rabbit's Cartoon Spin. It opened May 1st right there. And Depths Magic had a little bit of a summary of what he saw. Some effects actually are working again, which is very, very good. Looks like improvements in sound and lighting and paint and all of that. All the things you expect from a refurb that was somewhat benign, honestly, when you look at the calendar. But they did say this, which got me a little bit concerned when hearing our next news right here. It also seems to have changed the control of the spinning element for the attraction as well, but they didn't actually say what that was. Well, somebody actually came in here and broke the news. This by Tristan Kearney. The spinning aspect has been removed from the attraction with little fanfare. The vehicle now auto spins in certain sections of the track. It was a surprise to guests, and everyone looked confused as the wheel is still present. Yes, Roger Rabbit's Cartoon Spin has officially removed the spinning element on this attraction. You can see right here, I was going back and forth with Tristan. I was like, are you sure? Like, is this the case? This is crazy. This is wild. This is the thing that keeps this dark ride unique from all the other dark rides at the entire Disney Resort. they get rid of the spinning element. You can see right here, this from Shishkagumi over there on Twitter. Hopefully I got that right. You can see the wheel as it previously existed with the spin on it, right? Along the rim there of the center. And then the spin has been removed. For the first time in over 30 years, Roger Rabbit's cartoon spin is now without its iconic spin function. All references to the spinning have been removed across the queue, and even the wheel itself. The ride spinning is now automatic and no longer controlled by the rider. This is wild to me, Jared. This is so crazy. I can't even convey it. How insane this is, because this is the element on this attraction. It'd be like removing the enhanced motion vehicle system on Indiana Jones Adventure or the simulator portion of Star Tours. This is it. This is the gimmick that gets people on this attraction. It is basically a teacup through a dark ride. That's the whole thing surrounding Roger Rabbit's cartoon spin. It's in the name, folks. And yet it has been removed. So, what is it? Mickey Visit actually got to the bottom of this. And this article right here, Disney quietly changed 2 rides during closures with no warning. This by Lindsay Brookshire, May 4, 2026. Reached out to Disney looking for comment on this specific issue. And let's see. They said this. We reached out to Disney, and they shared a reason for the change directly with Mickey Visit. Disneyland officials shared with Mickey Visit that they are continuously making updates to attractions based on guest feedback and behavior. In this case, the ride change now means that they can offer lap sitting for younger guests on Roger Rabbit's cartoon spin, and by making modifications to the steering wheel component of the attraction. They also share that the update is part of a general effort to mitigate downtime on the attraction to allow more guests to experience the ride as part of their ongoing goal to improve ride uptime and maintenance. Now, this goes back to the Thomas Miles Symposium that he put on in February of this year, which, by the way, folks, we did cover, and extensively. And remember, they said they were going to reduce attraction downtime. Now, some of that might come from attractions maybe closing early. Maybe the park closing early, right? While they actually perform maintenance in the background. That way, with enhanced uptime, they can get more people through those specific attractions more regularly, more consistently, and increase uptime for all. So even though, let's say, the park closes at 11, the uptime is vastly improved, so that way we can better maximize the amount of hours they have open available. At least that's what they cited, that's what they showed, that's what they did. Okay, fair enough. To remove the signature element from this chair, this is absurd. This is crazy that they did this. I mean, I'll go back to advertisements actually dating back to the 1990s showcasing this attraction, and you tell me whether or not it's a signature element of this ride, of this land, of this place. Jared, this is super disappointing. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think wanting to have a mandate for better maintenance or better operations is great, but I guess it turns into like at the expense of what? So like, I've never ridden this attraction, but it's in the name that it spins. And this is the headlining part of it. It's like, I guess I can understand the argument of like wanting smaller kids, or is that just what they're saying? Like, it was one of those things where I figured the whole time when you were talking about that, it was about the maintenance issue of this. And then the other label we're going to put on this is, well, now we also lowered the height restriction because we took this part out. This becomes, I mean, I'm all for more efficiency, but it has become worrisome about, you start look at, say, Rise of the Resistance. It's a great ride, but it has a lot of issues, a lot of moving parts. To get more efficient, do things start being removed from other attractions as well? Like these big, you're talking about a ride that spins as the main component of it. That's where it becomes, are you shortchanging the experience for the maintenance end and the operations end?
Correct.
And I think that's where it becomes worse. And because then it's like, okay, is this ride in particular a huge deal? I don't know. It like you were saying, it's a really big deal. It's a ride that's been out there for a while. But the more this happens, this becomes a little worrisome, definitely, about like how far do you take this in the pursuit of efficiency versus, I think it's been talked about many times of not as much maintenance cost, because that's a cost that drags down the revenue and the profits, especially in the theme parks that subsidize most of the company as it has been in recent history. These are things you start seeing, and yeah, it's not great when your ride is it's a major spinning aspect, and now that's been removed. It's not a great look, I will say.
this it's so insane because, look, I remember back in the bad old days with like Paul Pressler when he ran Disneyland Resort, right? He had a saying: "If it's good enough for Six Flags, it's good enough for us."
Oh no,
that was the saying. Yeah, that's why Paul Pressler was so dangerous when it came to these parks, right?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, well, it caught up with them, right? We did see 2 incidents in which, you know, they forgoed some of that maintenance. They forgoed some of those things. And unfortunately, people lost their lives. And it was horrible and it was tragic. And ever since then, it was, you know, let's go ahead and do preventative maintenance instead because it's a better policy. And yes, it is. Part of that time, obviously, you had, I believe in 2000, you had an incident on this attraction specifically where a little boy was thrown from a car, and unfortunately, his head was wedged beneath another one, and he suffered some grave brain damage, and unfortunately passed away not too long ago. And most unfortunate. There's no question about that. And Disney did make changes. They made it so that these cars don't spin as fast, right? So they kind of locked them down. I think they did the same thing with the Mad Tea Party over there in Fantasyland as well because of this. Also, too, they further enclosed these ride vehicles. I think they added lap bars as well, and just a number of things in order to prevent that from ever happening again. So completely get that, completely understand that. Makes sense. But look, back in the Paul Pressler day, they had music on Space Mountain. It was like I think it was the Dick Dale version of that soundtrack right there. And honestly, they kind of retrofitted music onto those ride vehicles right there, and it didn't always play consistently. So what did Paul Pressler do? Well, let's axe music for all in order to give a consistent ride experience. Instead of actually fixing the problem, they just made it worse and said, hey, we have consistent show now. I think this kind of mentality is bleeding back in attempting to get to these efficiencies that Thomas Muslim is a big proponent of, big stickler for, as you pointed out so eloquently earlier on, Jared. This is wrong. Look, you know what? Go ahead. When it comes to Indiana Jones or Dinosaur or whatever it turns into, Indiana Jones 2.0 over there at Animal Kingdom, right? Let's just not have those vehicles move at all. I mean, it'd be less maintenance. It'd be more consistent for show. You would increase uptime, and hey, guess what? You would widen the amount of people that could actually go on it. I don't see a downside to that. Do you? Star Tours, okay? Hey, you want to eliminate height requirements? Just have it static. Everybody get in there. They take a seat. They don't even have to use seat belts. Watch the movie, and you get out.
Yeah.
This is like, where does this stop? That's the thing.
These are one of those things, like, I've always said a lot of times when it comes to the parks, like, a lot of things sound really good in a board meeting that maybe, and I've often wondered, like, how many executives really are on the ground as much. And I think this is where Josh does know this stuff more as the CEO, but yet, like, the Paul Pressler thing you're talking about, like, if it's good enough for Six Flags, I'm like, that's losing the entire plot of what makes Disney unique from these other theme park destinations and like we were saying before, is the details of this stuff. And so it's like, if you start losing specific details just because it's harder to maintain, then you're, again, once you do these amongst all the parks, you start losing all these little details. And I'm one of those components. Like, I think details matter. I think and I think the older Imagineers would tell you that. They'd say these small things make a huge difference when they're all added up. When you're talking about going on a vacation, all these little touch points, all these things that used to, you could call it the Disney magic or whatever you want to call it. It's hard to quantify exactly what that is, but it's the small things. Maybe it's a cast member interaction. Maybe it's a, whatever it is. And I think this falls into that, where you're right. It's like, okay, well, what is the floor of this? How far are you willing to take efficiency while losing major elements of rides that have been around, especially for decades? It becomes very worrisome because it makes sense on paper. If you're running the parks, you're like, hey, less maintenance, whatever. People are still going to ride it. But when this stuff becomes like the multiplying factor, the compounding factor of this is where you really start getting into some, not the dangerous. You start getting into some like unfortunate waters when you're talking about what makes the Disney parks unique to other theme park destinations.
Right. I You're exactly correct, and I think you've eloquently stated it better than I ever could. So, Jared, I do appreciate you being on board for this because, man, my anger is crazy right now.
Well, and I can tell,
It's
like,
insane.
I don't know this ride, so like, but obviously the name is spin is in the name, so obviously like removing that part, just changing that part, that's a big change for a ride. I mean, that's like having the teacups that you don't spin yourself anymore. And kind of the fun of the teacups is like my kids get on there. All they want to do is go as fast as we can. If we couldn't control that, if dad wasn't able to make us spin till we're dizzy, the kids probably wouldn't want to do it because that's kind of the fun part of it is you have some control over the ride itself.
Absolutely. That is part of this ride. It's okay. I'll let the advertisements speak for themselves. This is how they advertised this right back in the 1990s. All right, you tell me whether or not this is a big element. Here you go. And by the way, folks, if I have to cut this out in the future, a rewatch there, I'll put the links to these in the description. That way you can at least see them because copyright and all of that. So here you go. Let's go ahead and see if we can play this. No audio. Okay, good.
There's something new at Disneyland. And it's out of control. Moving, spinning, swerving, sliding, and it never stops. Well, almost never. It's the new Roger Rabbit's Cartoon Spin in Mickey's Toontown. You're in control. You're out of control. But can you escape the dreaded dips?
There you go, right? It's pretty evident that the spin feature is the main feature of the commercial here from a more backstage perspective. Wait, not that one. That's not the one I was thinking of. There's another one. I usually have all these references ready, folks. I do apologize. Well, it's to summarize, because I can't find it right here in my list of resources. But to summarize, it was just basically this behind-the-scenes view of this specific attraction, how you can spin 360 degrees and so forth, and how the Imagineers really, lovingly crafted this experience. And by the way, this experience, right? This because it had this design feature which you could spin 360. They took a teacup and they put it on. I believe it was Pinocchio's Daring Journey. That was the new ride for 1983 when that version of New Fantasyland actually opened. Put it on there, and they just as a test. Let's see what actually happens. And what they found is that if you spin 360 through an environment, usually your show is you're pointed forward towards it, and all of your lighting and so forth could be behind you. They couldn't really do that with this ride. They had to think 360. And so in order to maintain that show in all directions. So that was one of the lessons that they learned. The potential downside with that is that maybe these scenes aren't necessarily super elaborate, right? Because you do have to theme in 360. But in order to provide for the gimmick, that was a downside that they were willing to make in order to make this the experience that it is. Well, now because you can't auto spin, it's like now you have just a diminished dark ride experience, which, by the way, in terms of actually providing a consistent experience that's free from downtime, well, think again, because I believe it was 5 Fires over there with Danny by his side, actually going through the attraction themselves, trying to ride this thing in its new state. And, guess what, folks? Guess which ride didn't actually work when they actually tried to go through it themselves? Yes, it was Roger Rabbit's Cartoon Spin. So let me see if I can get this right here for you. Sorry, guys. I am just all over the place today, and I really do apologize. I usually have all this stuff up, and, well, I just don't today. Wait a minute. Was it my replies? Here we go. Hang on, folks.
I never get on a live stream and struggle to find links ever. I'm always super prepared, as Vash knows, during live stream. Yeah,
exactly. Here you go. So it was Danny here. Tried to experience the new spinless Roger Rabbit's Cartoon Spin, but it broke down. I guess taking away the spinning didn't improve guests, caused downtimes that much. So there you go. It didn't even work out. So honestly, there's really no benefit. Unless you have a toddler that can put on your lap now. Great.
Yeah.
For everybody else, it's just a diminished experience, and who knows if it's even going to equate to better uptime right there. So there you go, folks.
Also, in the refurb of Buzz Lightyear in Disney World, I think they also removed the self-spinning part of that as well. I believe.
Did they?
I haven't ridden it yet. We're going to ride it this weekend, but I want to say they maybe did, but I don't know that for certain. But it makes me wonder if they're maybe not doing the self-spinning stuff as much for, again, probably maintenance reasons. But yeah, I mean, with this ride though, like given it's still Roger Rabbit, which honestly from the outside looking in, I'm kind of surprised it's still around. Is this one of those rides that you're kind of surprised hasn't become something different IP wise?
Well, that's the thing. I was about to bring it up, and some people are reporting that the spinning element is still there with Buzz Lightyear, which if that is the case, awesome stuff right there.
I haven't
very good to see.
So I just wasn't sure in the new one if they'd gotten rid of that, because I will say that one was kind of annoying, like on the old version of it at least, like because your kid always wants to spin it, you can't shoot stuff properly. It's always frustrating for me, so I didn't know if that changed or not. Jared's
got kids. You see, that's the thing going on right there. Well, the interesting thing about this attraction is that because there's no manual spinning element, you're kind of like, you know, you're at the whims of wherever it faces you. And a lot of people are reporting, I was backwards for the entire ride. I couldn't even see like a lot of the show scenes and everything like that. So it's like, oh great, that's fantastic. So the implementation of getting rid of the spin was haphazard. Who could have guessed? Just annoying. Now, you say, are you surprised that this is still with us? I actually am, because around 2017, they were envisioning replacing this ride with a DuckTales ride. So on previous coverage on the Park Place and T3PO, I believe is when I originally brought this up. I had to look at my notes actually to bring this up. Here, August 31st, 2024 was this original post by DTVA News. Concept art for a proposed DuckTales 2017 attraction who was set to replace Roger Rabbit's cartoon Spin at Mickey's Toontown circa 2020. The pitch was scrapped due to COVID-19 cuts at Imagineering. Ooh, that's pretty good right there. But they were thinking DuckTales, which I don't know how especially relevant that would have been today, as opposed to Roger Rabbit, which was a huge mega picture, at least back 30 years ago it was. Interesting, because instead of the DuckTales thing, they said, okay, we're going to keep the ride, we're going to make some modifications to it. And, well, unfortunately, that meant that they had to modify Jessica Rabbit, putting a trench coat on her and making her a detective. Oh,
of course.
Absolutely fantastic. Yeah, we had to make it, good for a modern audience right there. I believe that's still there, maybe? Not sure, actually. Oh, yeah, okay. Of course. It was still there. It's a trench coat and fedora right there. That's what happened. Okay, so that was the previous version of Jessica Rabbit right there, and now the current version of Jessica, well, that scene anyway. But Jessica Rabbit's been restaged later on in that scene, and you can see her right. Well, that's one version of her, but there's another version of her. You can see right there, yeah. So trench coated up.
Some people can't handle the curves, I guess. You gotta really those winding roads.
She's just drawn that way. Come on.
I know.
Is that like a personal attack or something?
Or Ghost talked about one reason Disney won't do anime is because they'd end up putting trench coats on all the women if they did anime. They wouldn't even have it exist as it is. I mean, I will say, I remember Roger Rabbit.
That's pretty good.
The part it freaked me out as a kid was what was it? Christopher Lloyd's character when he's like his face is melting or whatever at the very end.
Yeah.
Kid. I remember having nightmares about that. I was his eyes bugging out and stuff. But
man, that movie. I mean, that's why it was under the Touchstone brand, not the Disney brand. They were going to put it out for Disney, and they thought it was like, ooh, we better have some brand separation here. And it was pretty risque even back in the day. But obviously a tremendous film, extremely successful. I think the budget for that was anywhere between $70 million or so, which is a lot back then. It was 1988, guys. And it made, I think, what was it? Almost 5 times maybe, at something around $350 million or so. Like it was big money. Yeah. And they tried to put it everywhere. At Disney Television Studios, actually, and in other places, and unfortunately didn't really pan out. Which, by the way, if you want to know why, you've got to tune in to this week's Vash and Vixen, where we go over the story of what happened to Roger Rabbit. Very interesting stuff indeed right there. Now, there's one more attraction downgrade we have to get to, and we have a little bit of breaking news and all of this before Ron's show. So this is going to be very, very interesting. The lightning round of the show, folks. Walt Disney World News today, Disneyland's Jungle Cruise reopens. Piranha fish removed from the attraction. This by Arisha Conrad over there, April 28th, 2026. Yes, the downgrades, they just keep coming. This is piranha fish. So what Walt Disney World News today reported here was that this piranha effect that was added, I believe, for the 2005 redo of this attraction to honor the 50th anniversary of the Jungle Cruise, well, it is no more. Because and you can see what that kind of looked like right here. The nature of how this works is that even if the fish don't go, you can still see them. According to Walt Disney World News today, though, they couldn't even see them in the water. So for all intents and purposes, it has been officially removed, even though there are references to the piranha and so forth. And I believe they saw the piranha pool over there at Jungle Cruise. Yeah, that's gone too. And it's just necessary downgrades, I guess. It's just we're just, in order to get consistent show, in order to reduce maintenance costs, in order to keep those revenues high, things gotta go.
Yeah, I think again, when you look at this stuff as like, you isolate it on its own, it's different, but you start looking at the bigger picture and like how, I guess I would just say, how far does this spread into how much does it go into like bigger attractions as well? Like I don't know if I don't recall if ours has a piranha scene. I'm trying to remember now. It's been a little bit it's been a couple months since I've ridden it, but yeah, I mean, it's these small things that add to the experiences that, I've talked about before, the perks as well. It's like even the simple stuff at Disney World, at least, like purchases you get in the park that they'll deliver it to your hotel room. They don't do that anymore. And that was a very easy perk that was just nice to have. And it's like, you just get a lot of these small things that are removed while prices keep going up. And it's just, I've said it many, and I think even Tom Bricker at Disney Tourist Blog even said, like, these things all work till they don't. There's a point in which you just can't keep raising prices, keep having these small details being removed before, at some point audiences will push back on it. It's just, I'm very curious as to what that point is, where the prices or the experiences kind of start waning in that way. But it's unfortunate. It definitely seems like a mandate. If you're seeing these many details kind of, even on the refurb of Big Thunder, we're seeing some of these details changing. It definitely seems like a mandate has been out there for sure.
I think there is a mandate here, and here's the thing: the person who would have mandated these changes basically all comes down to Thomas Moslem. He would have been the only one in a position in which these changes could have been made. This obviously happening before he actually was elevated to chairman, and that's the thing. He's now the chairman of Parks and Resorts. So is this what we have to expect? Look, I saw him. I recently heard an interview with him with. I cannot remember, WW Radio or something like that. Can't remember.
I think I saw a clip or something about that. Yeah, I think he was on there.
Yeah, Drew Disney Dude actually shared it, and it was really, really interesting to actually hear Thomas Moslem actually talk about all these kind of things. And look, he quotes Walt all the time, which is great, and he has a lot of fluffy language. But when you actually see the results of what he and other his management is kind of doing right here, I don't know. I'm not necessarily encouraged by what I see, but. C'est la vie. This is actually what happened. We have some breaking news right here, and I will say it might get just a little spicy, guys. Just chat. Be cool. Just be cool. Just be cool. That's all I ask. Just be cool. Everybody's cool. Yeah, that's the one right there. Let's go ahead and play that breaking news clip that we have. We were just talking about the cruise line for the Disney company right here and how, very profitable it has been. Perhaps maybe too profitable. From the New York Post right here, ICE agents storm Disney cruise docking in California and arrest multiple staff in front of stunned passengers. This by Ross O'Keefe right here. ICE agents stormed a Disney cruise ship docking in San Diego and arrested multiple workers in front of stunned passengers. Vacationers watched as immigration officials cuffed several employees on a Disney Magic ship while it was being unloaded. And remember, they just actually extended the port agreement that they have with San Diego for an extended period of time. I can't remember what it was, but, well, there you go. Passenger Darmi Meta took a video of the moment saying one of those detained was her server during the cruise. Oh, the 5-day cruise ship right here. Wow, that is really something. He was in full uniform, which was in blazer, tie. Some of the other employees were still in their chef's uniforms with their name tags on. Meta said, calling the arrests really unsettling. Meta said that she didn't know how he would reach out to his family without his belongings, which it did appear that he did not take with him. Quote, so that was just my big concern. Like, how is he going to reach out to his family? Does the family even know that he's not getting back on ship today? Meta said she witnessed federal agents loaded crew members into a white van. 10 crew members from the Disney ship were arrested, and another 4 from another ship the next day, the immigration group said. Oh, boy. Well, look, this is not what you want to see. But look, I mean, this is the thing, right? So when you are operating a company, right, there are certain rules and regulations in which you have to abide by, especially if this is a cruise ship that makes port in the United States. Well, you kind of have to follow those laws to a certain extent, and it does seem, at least on the outside right here, obviously, you know, maybe there's a process by which they can actually figure out whether or not these people were, legally in the country or not. But it is a little bit unsettling that the Walt Disney Company would be, maybe have employed these people right here with maybe not doing background checks, or maybe they did, or I don't even know what's going on here. Jared, your thoughts on this one?
At least it wasn't like Mickey Mouse getting arrested, the person in there, I suppose. That'd have been more traumatizing, I think, for everybody around.
That's no good. We don't want Mickey Mouse arrested.
That
no!
would be good. I've always been curious, because I know there's different rules around a lot of the cruise lines. Aren't they based internationally? So, like, because I've been on one cruise. We're going on one later this year, but yeah, I believe most of the staff is international. So I don't really know how it works for Disney Cruise in that situation. I don't know exactly the logistics behind that, but I think Disney wouldn't be the only company out here. I guess whatever laws are in place in California versus other states of how requirements for employment. But obviously, I would imagine somebody had tipped them off if they were waiting at the port. That's kind of the interesting part of, like, unless they were just doing a whole investigation into all this. But it would be very unsettling. I mean, if you're on going on a cruise, that's not the best way to either start or end your cruise is, law enforcement pulling up to arrest the people that were, part of your cruise or something.
Serving
like that.
you? Oh, no. Like,
I'd like to give you a tip. And then, you're like, well, I guess I'm keeping it. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't know the logistics in the employment side, but it's obvious. I mean, it's unfortunate to have that happen. But at the same time, if there is a big issue from I guess that would be my question, from the employment side, would this mean Disney's potentially, I know there can be fines from some of this stuff, but again, I don't know all that into things.
Well, and this is kind of the first. I mean, people have kind of been concerned about employment at the Walt Disney Company. I've been assured by multiple people that it's like, hey, like Disneyland workers, Walt Disney World workers, they have significant background checks, and people even on visas have a hard time actually becoming cast members and all of that because of these laws and regulations surrounding all of this. And obviously, the Walt Disney Company doesn't want to be in the crosshairs of the current administration over there. It's 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, so it's kind of like this is something right here. I mean, we'll keep track on this, folks. I just want to go ahead and bring it to your attention because I saw it going all over social media right here. And look, after this tremendous earnings call in which they said that, the backbone of a lot of what they're doing at the Experiences division itself is going to be predicated on cruise line. Yep. Kind of a significant story for sure.
Yeah. Here's a question. I'm curious about this. Do you think, and I've had this theory that Disney, they're going to invest more in the cruise end because maybe they're recognizing Orlando and the theme parks. I mean, there's not much you can do about an emerging Universal at this point, but they feel like they can make up that difference maybe with the cruising, because as of right now, and I think Universal might get into the future, but as of right now, they kind of just see growth in the cruise line. And this is the way they may end up growing more, is through the cruise lines and not as much in the theme park side, like trying to maintain more and actually seeing growth in the cruise lines. I kind of feel like that is what they've been doing the past few years.
Yeah, so it's really interesting to see the strategy by Universal, because they're a little bit more experimental. Obviously, they have that kids park opening up in Frisco, Texas, which is kind of a big gamble. You know, we've not really seen that from the big two. Develop a park like that to such a distinguished audience in the middle of the country and all of that. Obviously, they're looking at Legoland's performance and going, we want a piece of that, which I think is very, very interesting. And I think Mark Woodbury has said that those are kind of experiences that can maybe lead to maybe a destination experience in the future, like for Orlando or in Hollywood, as it's going to be a resort in itself, which is very, very interesting. Then you see stuff like Halloween, right? The Halloween Horror House or
Horror Unleashed.
Horror Unleashed at Vegas, right? Apparently that's not doing so well, but it's, you know, it's kind of swing, right? And maybe you don't, you know, make all of them, but at least they took that swing. I can tell you right now, Jared, they are looking at a cruise line, because I think that's like the one part of their portfolio where it's like, okay, Disney is having like tremendous success here. What would it look like if we got into this? And but obviously, you know, there's only so many ship manufacturers out there. Can get kind of difficult to do that. So does that look like a licensing deal, which is what Disney's actually started out with, or do they actually go full bore and 4 ships or whatever? I don't know, but I can tell you right now, there are conversations. Could you imagine actually going to an island and it's like the real Isla Sorna? That might be pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, even what's the co-CEO of Comcast, and my name's blanking now at this point, but he had mentioned before, that kind of even alluded to like looking at cruise lines. And I do know on their URL, I think they have like Universal Cruise Line something.com reserved. They recently did some changes to that URL, what kind of indicates they may be building a website behind it. So I agree with you. I do think they end up doing it. I kind of get the idea if they take the same approach they've taken with the hotels, they might partner at first, at least, just because I would imagine getting into cruise lines is going to be a good 10 billion, or if not more. I don't even know what the prices for that go, but it's me up there.
I mean, a new ship is at least $1 billion if you want to do it right? And I'm sure Universal wants to go full bore into that. So 4 ships plus the infrastructure that you would actually require, maybe not 10 billion, but you're still up there, like 5, 6, 7, that kind of thing. Like,
essentially,
to your point.
Yeah.
Yes, it's basically another epic universe. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a really, really good point, which, I mean, it worked out there. But again, for a company like Comcast, who I think is $100 billion in debt, so, you know, maybe they have to wait on their ambitions just a little bit. But they have proven that they can really penetrate even legacy markets like Walt Disney World very effectively with the opening of Epic Universe and other things. So there you go. Hopefully you guys found value in this stream and found informative, found, you know, riveting, exciting. Some of these stuff you may have heard. Some of this stuff is completely brand new, but I was happy to bring it to you, and I was very happy to bring it to you with Jared from Couch to the Magic. He does an excellent job on his channel. Jared, where can the people find you out there? Where can they follow you? Please go ahead, sir.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for having me. It's always a good time talking with this. I appreciate your legwork. I like, even when you're on our live streams, you've always got video stuff ready. I appreciate that, because I am not as organized. So I need to work on that, but I appreciate it. You can find me at Captain Magic everywhere, YouTube, social media. We're more active on Instagram. If you're looking for Disney World and Universal Studios, like tips, reviews, things like that in the parks themselves, you can check out CTM Podcast with my wife and I. She knows, she's been going to Disney since she was like 2, so she knows all these parks very well. But that's where you can find me. Very happy to be here. Thank you for the chat, for everybody hanging out and participating, and greatly appreciate it.
Oh, let's see here, right here. I do apologize. Why Dragon Star coming in here? Did I get your super chat? I do believe maybe I didn't actually. I very much apologize, Hawaii Dragon Star. You see, we get caught up in all these stories, and sometimes, you know, things happen. But let me go ahead and make sure that we get every single person on here. Hawaiian Dragon Star with the $5. Thank you so much, kind sir. Very much appreciate that. And hey, now you've reconnected. Now you can hear it. Big Thunder Changes showcases how Disney no longer cares about details in their present mindset of no longer caring about details and canon. Yeah, I mean, that's the problem, right? So canon, I mean, look at Star Wars. Not good. Not great what happened right there, but maybe, hey, it's just Kathleen Kennedy, right? Maybe with new leadership, maybe that changes. Well, hopefully it does. But then you see like Imagineering and the details get lost. Like Cicerone was perfectly eloquent in describing right there, like the crane, for instance. Like, come on, like Pat Burke. Can we at least have that reference? The possums and stuff. I didn't even notice that they were missing, but yeah, they are missing. It's just these little things. Sand. That add up to the extraordinary experiences that we all remember and we all take away from. And look, Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, it was a coaster that opened, I think in 1980 over there at Magic Kingdom or somewhere around that area of time. Yeah. Okay, I know it opened in 79 in Disneyland. Mm-hmm. Just I haven't quite memorized all the years for the attractions out at Magic Kingdom, but obviously it's an older coaster, and so those little details help make it relevant for a new generation. They help in crafting that experience and what makes it so good, right? Because the thrill itself of that coaster, well, it's kind of benign, but that theming, that detail, everything like that makes it a fantastic attraction. So Hawaii Dragon Star, you are exactly right there. Very much agree with you, and thank you for the $5. We also had some questions and so forth. Sorry we couldn't get to them all. But I very much appreciate every single one of you actually coming in here. Please join us tomorrow, actually. It's going to be on, at 7 p.m. Eastern, right before Marvel Montanero's live stream right there, in which we'll get even deeper into so many more stories. I mean, I have like 10 waiting for you guys. So trust me, we're going to have a lot of content to actually go over with you, and you will be enriched from it, I assure you. Jared, I want to go ahead and thank you again for coming on here. I think it's been... absolutely fantastic. I love it when you're on. You know the thing, and you have a great charisma, and I do appreciate you.
Oh, I appreciate that. I try. I do my best, and sometimes either people are like, "Hey, that Jared guy's really great," or he rambles too much, and both are probably right. So either way, people you get what you expect them anyways. But I appreciate it.
Absolutely. You can go ahead and follow him at Cap the Magic right there on YouTube. That's his tag if you want to go ahead and enter that into your URL yourself, or you can go ahead and use the link in the chat, and he's also in the description right there, which is really, really cool. I believe his X is also in there as well. Thank you so much for coming on into Vash Sky ParkCast. Like I said, tomorrow at 7 p.m. Eastern, we're going to be covering all kinds of stuff. I don't even know what the lead story is going to be, but we have, like, for example, an assault on a cast member, and maybe they were trespassed for it. That's very interesting stuff indeed. A maid, as part of this undercover sting investigation right there. They caught her in the act. How much did she steal? What's she doing? Well, it's really interesting stuff. You want to go ahead and tune in tomorrow to hear all those crazy stories and more. And also, too, there was an incident on Kilimanjaro Safari today. I don't know if you saw that, Jared. I was going to cover that with you, but yeah. You gotta go, I guess. You gotta go when you gotta go, I guess. But really, that ride? I don't think so. So there's a whole lot more there for you tomorrow on this show. It's going to be a whole lot of fun. And on Saturday, for you members out there, well, guess what, folks? We have Vash and Vixen. It's going to be at 3 p.m. Eastern, talking about the behind the scenes of Roger Rabbit, its significance in the Walt Disney Company. I think it's going to be a really fun conversation to have. And also, too, maybe a little Anthony Daniels as well. Vixen was like, hey, look at C-3PO. It looks awesome. That being the C-3PO in the parks. And it's like, yeah, that is awesome. But Anthony Daniels and what he went through is even awesomer. And we'll go ahead and cover all those things and more. It should be a lot of fun. And, we're a little all over the place, but don't worry, folks. We'll pull you through just fine. Anywho, let's go ahead and get you on over to Ron's channel. I know I'm a little late. Sorry. Go ahead and give him a Vash Sky ParkCast raid there for us. I think that would be really, really awesome if you could. Yes, for all the Bradley's fun, his show is on right now. Apologize about that, Ron. We're a little late, but don't worry, we'll give you the redirect. So, from us over here at the Vash Sky ParkCast and from Capture the Magic, very much appreciate you tuning in. And remember, folks, the sky is the limit. We'll see you all later.